And we should be good to go. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day. My favorite genre of content on my For You page right now is clips from Kerbal Space Program with the caption, "This is Poopy PP 67 trying to grab Jebediah Kerman, parentheses, he's not coming home." And then it has, like, you know, that song playing in the background or some other like arena rock song playing in the background. So good. It's such a good genre of TikTok video. It's definitely like 30% of my FYP right now. All right, we do have a guest, so let me just finish getting set up and then we'll bring up our first guest. Today is the 17th. Have you played KSP yourself? Yeah, I played so much KSP. I played so much KSP when I was in college. All right, I think, oh, he left, never mind. All right, well, we'll give it a few minutes for people to trickle in. We'll give people some time to join up, and in the meantime, let me just make sure that everything's up and running. What's your answer to the against discoverability argument? I don't know what the against, do you mean the, I don't even know what the discoverability argument is. I don't think anybody's ever run that against me. It's, so if the discoverability argument is that, you know, this is a summary. The discoverability argument goes further than this. It's not just that the universe obeys mathematical laws we could eventually grasp, it's that the specific values of physical constants are set, the exact points that make those laws most accessible to scientific investigation. So I would say two things. I would say that actually both of those premises are false. A, I wouldn't grant that the universe obeys mathematical laws. That seems like it presupposes that mathematics is discovered rather than invented. And B, it doesn't seem like it's true that the specific values of physical constants are set at the exact point that makes those laws most accessible to scientific investigation. Perhaps some of them are, which is why we've been able to do science, but it seems like at least, it seems like the Planck scale, which is arguably the most important scale for understanding how the universe functions, is completely outside of our grasp as far as scientific investigation is concerned. So that would be my response. All right, let's bring up Skieth, our first guest of the day. Oh, he didn't want to come up. Okay. Bummer. How am I doing? I'm doing okay. My nose is healing up. It's not healing up perfect, but it is healing up. Definitely going to have a scar there. Might even have like a divot. But, you know, what can we do? Can you explain how math isn't discovered? Well, look, mathematicians invent math all the time. That's just what that's like what a mathematician's job is. You come up with some new thing. You're not like digging around in the forest for, you know, for categories. Like you're thinking and inventing things. Christie, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Your microphone is kind of not great. Are you able to fix that?
Is it better?
I mean, not really, but I guess we can make do.
Okay.
Christie, do you believe in a god?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and what religion would that be?
I'm not a religion. I just think there's a greater force that led to our creation.
Okay, why should I believe that?
Because the universe is so, like, specific. Like, there's so many ways if something was just a little bit different that we wouldn't be here right now. And
okay, Christie, just a quick question. How old are you?
I'm 22.
And what year were you born?
2003.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, people in the comments were curious, so I just wanted to double check that you were above 18. So
Yeah.
you say that things are so specific. If they were different, then we wouldn't be born. Can you give me examples?
Just like if the force of gravity was stronger, Earth wouldn't have been created and everything, the universe wouldn't exist.
Why do you think that Earth wouldn't have formed if gravity were a bit stronger?
I don't know. But yeah, at the end of the day, I can't convince you to believe in anything. That's something you choose.
You think that, generally speaking, you choose your beliefs? Oh, she left. Okay. Well, that wasn't very interesting. I don't know why she came up. Oh, well. Yeah, it's a weird statement, right? Like, to say that you choose your beliefs is a little unusual because generally when we talk about beliefs, we talk about things that convinced us that something is true. And so it's not clear to me that being convinced of something is a choice. Let's talk to Ayub Kasa. Ayub, how's it going?
What's up, bro? Good.
There's some pretty serious background noise there. Would you be able to move to a quieter place?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know anything about religion, so I just want to ask you a few questions.
So
So,
just to be clear, do
so
you
what
believe in
you're
a God?
saying is,
Do you believe in a God?
yeah, I do believe in God. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Alright. I hope you can understand my English because it's my second language.
I can understand you fine. There's just a
So,
lot of background noise.
Yeah, I just left. I was in Starbucks.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hope you're gonna understand my English. First question. Do you want to see proof before you start believing in God?
I'd like to be given some reason, whether that reason is proof of one kind or another, or if it's strong evidence, or if it's, some compelling justification, something like that.
Okay, so you want proof before you start believing in God,
Or evidence.
right? You want
yeah,
him to
sure.
come down. So you want him to come down and say, "Here I am."
No, that's not required.
So that you can start believing. Do you want to see his pictures? Do you want to hear his voice?
No, that's not required.
So what is proof? What does it mean to you?
I didn't say the word proof, you did. I said proof or evidence or justification.
So evidence based on probabilities, right?
Evidence,
So
yeah,
if
that's one way to phrase it. Evidence would be some piece of data that is best explained by, the model or the idea that you're proposing.
So, okay, probabilities. So probabilities means something like 80% before you start believing in God. 90%,
I mean, if you can
70%?
get me to over 50%, I'd believe.
Over 50.
Yeah.
But the other 50%, you're still not going to be sure on. You're still not going to be sure whether God exists
if you get
or
me to
not.
50-50, if you get me to 50-50, I'd be agnostic. If you get me over 50,
below
then
50.
Yes, I'm below 50.
Okay, so you're somewhere between 10 and 20.
No,
or
I'm not.
like zero.
I'm at like 1%, maybe 0.1%.
Okay, so okay, 50. Okay, that was my question. Wouldn't you think that if there was proof that nobody would be an atheist and there would be
Why are we talking about proof again?
100%? Because normally atheists, they ask for proof. They say, prove God to me.
So
they say prove him
just
to
to
me.
be just
So
to be clear,
if
are you talking
if they
to
prove-
normally
if-
atheists, or are you talking to somebody who has told you several times now that you could give me proof, you could give me evidence, or some other kind of justification? Doesn't have to be proof.
No, I'm talking about in general.
Okay,
when
well,
you speak to an
I'm
atheist,
not in
they
general.
ask, no,
I'm
I'm
an
not talking
individual.
about you particularly now. I'm just speaking generally speaking. When you debate an atheist, not me. I don't really debate an atheist because it's not my thing.
So you don't usually debate atheists. I'm not the kind of person, the kind of atheist that you're referring to. So why are we talking about this hypothetical debate between somebody else and somebody else? Why don't we just talk about the subject? You and me, we're both individuals, we can talk.
Yeah, sure. But let me just ask you a few questions. I'm just trying to speak in general, okay? Wouldn't you say that for the atheist, if there is God, if there is proof of God, nobody would be an atheist?
If there were proof, I mean, like, if the atheists are rational, then yeah.
Okay, so if there were proof, there will be no atheists.
Well, there would be no rational atheists.
What do you mean by rational atheists?
There can be irrational people who reject proofs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean.
So so back to the probability. So you want 50%.
I want more than 50%, yeah.
So you wouldn't want 100%.
I mean, like if you could get me there, if you could get me there, that'd be great. But I think that it'll be easier to get me to above 50%. Look, Ayub, do you have an argument? Do you have an argument? Do you have a piece of evidence, or is this just like an interview?
This is not my. I'm just trying to understand your world and how you think.
Okay, but the prompt does say, "Can you convince me to believe in your God?" So if you're not here to do that, then this is probably off topic.
Yeah, okay, let me just ask you one last question before I go.
Sure.
So you said if you want 50%, so in that case, you will be speculating. So when you start believing in God, you want the 50%. So 50%, that means you're a speculator, right? You're speculating if God actually... Because what about the other 50%? You could be wrong.
If my credence is more than 50%, then that means that I think that God is more likely than not. And so I would say that that's how I form beliefs.
If you're not 100% a believer, like you 100% on it, you're just, but you're saying 50% is fine.
Well, more than
so that
50%,
means you're speculating.
Yes.
Okay, so now you change your answer?
I never changed my answer. You just keep repeating 50%. Okay. I said more than 50%, or at least 50%. Anything more than 50%? Anything more than 50%.
Okay, 70%?
Anything more than 50%. 51%, okay, 50.0005%. Like anything more than 50%.
Okay, so even if it's 70%, you're still speculating.
No, I don't call that speculation. Okay, but thanks for being here, Ayub. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Take care.
It doesn't sound like you really wanted to have a conversation. All right, let's talk to the Christian Crusader. With a name like that. I hope for a good back and forth. The Christian Crusader, how's it going?
Yeah. Yo, what's up, man?
I'm doing all right. Christian Crusader, do you believe in a God? Is that a silly question? All right.
It is a silly question, but it's okay.
Fair enough. Right. So I assume that you're a Christian. Are you a Catholic or Eastern Orthodox or some sort of Protestant?
Yeah. So I grew up in Catholicism, but now I'm kind of leaning towards Eastern Orthodoxy.
Okay. I'm just curious. It's not, I don't know how relevant it'll be for the conversation. So look, I don't hold those views. I mean, it's pretty clear. I say that I'm an atheist. So what would you say is the most compelling piece of evidence or the most compelling argument that you could offer me that might bring me to Jesus?
Yeah. So of course, like I understand your perspective of trying to view the evidence centered around like the Bible and Christianity in general and arrive to your conclusion that way. And I understand that because I also am that way with like everything. Obviously, I think it's completely rational to try to base your beliefs off of evidence. But I hold the belief that belief in God is never going to come fully as a result of evidence. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, evidence is never going to fully bring you to the point of full belief, because I think that contradicts God's intention with creation and his purpose.
So what is the additional factor? So let's say that belief gets you to maybe 50-50 or something like this. What's the additional factor that pushes you over past the 50-50 mark?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's faith, of course. Like, would you agree that to some extent your beliefs require faith?
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by faith, but generally, no. I don't understand faith to be a good way to form beliefs.
Well, in the sense that nothing is 100% proven in your life. So nothing that you believe you know for sure to be true.
Well, I mean, I don't make the claim that, you know, my beliefs are based on 100% surety. I form beliefs based off of, you know, some degree of, or some high degree of credence in something being true. For example, like, you know, I believe that my wife is, sorry, I believe that my wife loves me, but like she could have been like a hired actor for the sorry. She could have been like a hired actor for like the last 15 years. And, you know, so I can't know with 100% certainty that she actually loves me, but I have a high degree of credence that she does. I wouldn't say that there's any faith involved in that, though.
Okay, but so my thing is, you're saying that, like, essentially based off the evidence, like based off what you observe and like what you know about her, that's the evidence you take that she loves you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're still accepting that there's some uncertainty, like there is a possibility that that isn't the case.
Yeah.
But you're not, like, you don't really have a reason to justify that belief. Like,
well, I think that having a high degree of certainty, even if it's not 100% certainty, is justification for a belief.
Well, I'm not saying that necessarily. I'm just saying that there, like, when I was saying every belief you hold has some faith, like, you're basically describing that you believe, although it's possible for your wife to not actually love you, you still hold the belief that she does, even though there's a possibility that she doesn't. And
so
that,
are you just taking, are you just defining faith to be having a belief in something without 100% certainty?
No, I would say faith is more like you're affirming something that you hold to be true without that 100% certainty. So I guess, like, in a way.
So if you're just defining faith as believing that something is true without 100% certainty that it's true, if you're just defining that as faith, then sure, I think that that's what all kinds of thought is. I don't think that people really come to 100% certainty about anything. I think people form beliefs based off of
that's
how likely they think something is. But it doesn't sound like that's what you're doing, because if we wind the clock back just a few minutes, you said that faith is what gets you from 50%, say 50-50. Evidence, say, gets you to 50-50, and then faith gets you the rest of the way. I wouldn't say that that's the kind of thing that you should do for belief forming. I would say that if you want to form, or you can rationally form a belief, if maybe you're saying 95%, maybe it's 95.5.
Yeah, but
then
how
you
are
could
you
form that belief, no problem. But 50-50, how do you determine which direction to go?
Well, okay, so the thing is, you asked me if it was 50-50, what would the rest be? And I'm telling you, in that scenario, if you think something, if you're like 50% certain that something's true, but you still believe it, then the rest of that is, of course, faith. But you're also, like, giving these quantitative metrics in terms of, like, how likely you think something is to be true, but how are you able to put a number on that? Like,
well,
even if you hold that idea that this is, like, to you it's like 95% true, that's like purely abstract. Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah, of course it's abstract. I mean, the point is at least we agree that, like, in scientific studies we can do statistics and we can figure out the probability that our hypothesis is true. And so all I'm doing is I'm using that kind of language to describe things, because we know what that maps onto as far as the natural world is concerned, so we can use that same kind of reasoning. So let's back up and let's think about, like, let's think about this scientifically, and, like, not even talk about the God concept. So would you say that, let's say that we have some experiment. We run the experiment and we conclude that the experiment confirms our hypothesis with a 1% chance of error. Would it be reasonable to say that the hypothesis, or would it be reasonable to believe that the hypothesis is true?
Yeah, I mean, I guess without like the amount of context that we have, I think it could be true. I think it depends. Like I think what you're talking about right now is like, obviously in statistics, like if you're at a casino, obviously you can like predict to a fair extent like the outcome of a game if you run it X amount of times, right? But we're not really talking in that same category. Like we're talking about the likelihood of something being true or not the likelihood of like something happening. Like,
well, no, I'm talking about the same thing. I'm talking about a hypothesis being true, right?
what would like an example of?
An example would be something like, just a classical one, like charges attract, or opposite charges attract. That could be a hypothesis that somebody had 300 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And then you could run experiments and you could check using statistics. You take you take different kinds of charges and then you put them next to each other and you see what happens, and you take statistics, and then you can conclude with, you know, perhaps with 1% chance of making a mistake, or perhaps 1 in a million chance of making a mistake, whatever it might be. You can conclude with some degree of certainty, but not 100% certainty, that the hypothesis that you have is true.
And how, so you're applying a similar logic to like that, like immaterial things, though.
Well, okay, but I'm just trying to explain my thought process here. So we agree that if you, so hear me out. We agree that if you run these experiments and you know, all of your numbers come out saying that, you know, there is a 1 in a million chance that the hypothesis is wrong, is it then reasonable to conclude, or to believe rather, that the hypothesis is correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be fine, but
okay, so hold on, I'm not done. Now, suppose that you take your data and instead you get a 50-50 chance of your hypothesis being correct. Is it then reasonable to believe that your hypothesis is correct?
I mean, it maybe not to believe it's correct, but that it could be correct.
Yeah, that it could be, that it's a possibility. Maybe you should remain
Yeah.
agnostic about whether a hypothesis is actually correct, or maybe you should go collect more data, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is that it seems like that there's a categorical distinction between uncertainty that leans, that pushes you in one direction strongly. Like there is some uncertainty, even if you're 99% sure, there is still some uncertainty. There's a categorical distinction in beliefs that form from 99% certainty and beliefs that form from 50% certainty. So what I'm getting at is that it seems like the kinds, when you say that a lot of the beliefs that I have are based on faith, what it sounded like you were saying is that I'm not 100% certain, and so there's some degree of faith there. And if that's all you mean, then sure, you could say that there is some degree of faith in believing the 99% certain thing. But that's a different kind of belief forming mechanism compared to the 50% chance thing. And so what I'm trying to get at is, how do you get from, you know, say you have a low degree of credence in some view, say you don't think it's very likely, how do you get to that high degree of thinking that it's likely without just an arbitrary decision?
Okay, so I see like the point you're trying to make, but I think it's a category error because you're comparing, so you obviously are comparing this justification for belief based on of a degree of certainty, right?
Yeah.
You're saying the higher the degree of certainty, the more justified the belief is. That's essentially what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and you're comparing material beliefs and things that we can observe and measure with immaterial beliefs, and you're like holding the same standard of like degree of certainty with belief in God, which isn't possible, of course, because this is not something that you can measure and study and observe and repeat. So if you're saying like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I thought that you were trying to imply is that if someone has a 50% degree of certainty in the belief of God, then that belief is unjustified, or it's kind of irrational to an extent.
That's roughly what I'm saying. And look, so I'm not trying to say that we can like quantify our degree of certainty in these kind of more abstract things. What I'm saying is that we can use the same sort of methodology that we use in more, material, quantitative, concrete things as a way of kind of guiding the way that we should think about things. So I would say that somebody who's agnostic, who's really on the fence about whether or not God exists, in some way, they're at the 50-50 mark, right? They're not really sure one way or the other. They haven't seen enough evidence that makes them convinced one way or the other. I would say that a theist is probably somewhere above the 50-50 mark. Maybe they're 80-20 if they're an agnostic theist, or maybe they're 95-5, or maybe they're 99%. And maybe they're almost 100% certain that a God definitely exists. And an atheist, like myself, might be at the 1% mark or the 5% mark. So what I'm saying is, it sounded like you were saying at the beginning of the conversation that evidence can only get you to being agnostic. It can only get you to that 50-50 mark. And then beyond that is faith. And what I'm trying to understand is, why should we use faith to go from agnostic to believer?
Okay, well, for one, I would not say that evidence can only bring you to that 50-50 mark, because I mean, we've seen there's been like many people that have converted off of evidence, right? Like
okay, so then I misunderstood what you said at the beginning of the conversation, and that's my bad.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you want me to like kind of repeat?
Well, maybe I can just ask a question just to clarify then. So would you say that evidence can get you to some degree of certainty that God exists? It just can't get you to 100%? Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the evidence that is most effective at pushing that certainty up?
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot that we could get into, but we could look at the credibility of the Bible. We could look at it as a historical document, compare it to other historical documents that we hold to be credible, and we could see the accuracy within the text. We could see the textual purity, how it's been preserved over time. We can look to secular and historians, even during biblical times, like affirming the existence of Jesus and his death. Like, we know these people were real. Like, we know it's not like a fiction book. We can verify locations and people, and we can verify that the text has not been altered over time, because we still have the original manuscripts. The pure volume of manuscripts that we have is unlike anything we've seen in any historical document ever. There really is like lots of evidence you could get into. And
is there a particular one that you want to start with?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm not sure how much you have looked into the evidence.
I mean, I've spoken with a lot of people. I've done some reading. I've paid attention in my world religions class. I went to a religious high school, so I'm fairly familiar with it.
Yeah. I'd also just like to add, obviously this is going to be more controversial and not like as easy to discuss, but my worldview, I hold the perspective that the Christian triune God is the only grounding for things like logic and reason, and morality, of course. I think morality does not exist without the Christian God.
Well, that's going to be a claim that needs some sort of justification, of course.
Yeah, so
like, if you want to run tag, we can talk about it, but I'm just going to push you on justifying your claims. If you'd rather get into the historical stuff, we can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, the historical stuff is probably more productive, honestly, since...
Okay. So my view generally, and I can just summarize my take, I think that Jesus probably existed. I think that we have as good reason for thinking that Jesus existed as we did for like most historical figures. I think that it's very plausible. I think that it's entirely, like, I'm not going to give 100% certainty, but I think it's very, very plausible that Jesus was crucified. That seems totally historical. My contention with the biblical narratives is that it seems like the kinds of things that are described that one might call miraculous. These are the kinds of things that we don't really have good justification for believing. And I'll give examples from the Hebrew Bible. I don't think that we have any really good reason to think that the Red Sea was ever split. I don't think that we have really any good reason to think that there was a flood. I don't think that we really have any good reason to think that there were 10 plagues in Egypt. And in the New Testament, in the newer part of the Christian Bible, I don't think that we really have any good reason to think that Jesus rose from the dead. I don't think that, as far as like historical evidence goes, I don't think that we have really any good reason to think that any of these miracles, any of the like more minor miracles happened, like multiplying fish and these kinds of things. So that's generally my take. I think that the historical evidence, like we can go find historical evidence of these cities existing. We can find secular historians, or at least non-Christian historians, talking about Jesus. I think all of those things are totally fine. What they don't do is they don't verify these miraculous claims.
Yeah, so I completely understand your perspective of naturally wanting to like be in possession of more evidence in order to justify these supernatural things, because obviously they're things that are not really observed.
They're not common, right?
Yeah, of course. So like, of course it's natural to kind of require more evidence to believe that, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where, like, that's kind of why I opened the way I did, because if you want evidence and enough evidence to be able to justify believing in these supernatural things, then, like I was saying, I don't think that's ever going to get you to the point of belief, because if you look at it from the Christian perspective, right, like God created us out of love, and God created us not because he needed anything or gained anything from creation, but he wanted to have a genuine relationship with us and like to share his love with us. And so in my perspective, if it was possible to arrive to the conclusion of God's existence via evidence, pure evidence, and like no faith at all, then to me that's not a genuine relationship that he can have with us, because at that point you're forced into belief, right? Like if there's a way for us to look at the evidence and arrive to the hard conclusion that God exists, then everyone would believe. Would you agree?
Yeah, everybody would believe that God exists, sure. At least the rational people would.
Yeah, I agree. And so if you're at that point that everyone would agree, how would it be possible that people are entering in a loving relationship with him, knowing that he exists for sure?
I mean,
and it's not really a choice at that point. Like
I don't see how this takes away choice whatsoever. I mean, consider this. You can know about someone without being in a relationship with them. And an example is, I acknowledge that Louis Armstrong exists, or existed rather. I don't know if he's still alive. He's a famous trumpet player. But I certainly don't have a relationship with him. So it seems like that this is kind of conflating two things. It could be the case that everybody knows he exists, and then people choose whether or not to have a relationship with that person. And it doesn't seem like it's taking away choices at all.
Okay, for one, sorry, I don't want to backtrack, but we can still talk about the evidence around like these supernatural events after. But
okay,
yeah, in terms of what you're saying, it's different because obviously we know there's repercussions to not believing in God, correct, and not having a relationship with him. Like, would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, but that seems like it has its own issues, right?
Why is that?
Well, imagine that you knew that God existed, like you had a high degree of certainty that God existed, but you didn't agree with the let me just give an example, and we don't have to talk about the details of this, but suppose that your interpretation of the Hebrew Bible is that God is the kind of being that rejoices in the genocide of the opposition, right? Suppose that is your, I mean, maybe that's not the correct interpretation, but suppose
hypothetically?
Hypothetically. Suppose that that's your interpretation, not yours, but someone's interpretation of the Hebrew Bible. Well, it can be true that they believe that this is a genocidal maniac, and also that they believe it exists, right? Now, if it's then also the case that this genocidal maniac will send you to hell unless you choose to worship and love and obey this being, well, that doesn't seem like it's a genuine relationship at all. So it seems like by adding in this coercive factor, it seems like it's taking away the choice, not adding a choice.
Okay, so for one, you're saying hypothetically, if you interpreted the Bible to say that God is some genocidal maniac or whatever, first of all, how would you arrive, if you reject that God, how can you justify that those things are bad?
Are you?
If God is a source of morality, then
in this hypothetical, suppose that the person has some other way that they come to conclusions about moral facts.
So you're essentially saying it's a problem for God to send someone to hell if they have an incorrect interpretation of God.
What I'm saying is that coercion doesn't seem like it adds choice. It seems like it takes away choice.
Well, why do you think it's coercion?
I mean, you kind of said it was. You said that there are consequences if you don't put your faith in God. And presumably, I mean, I was just interpreting what you were saying, but I imagine that you were talking about hell.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, I see it as a consequence, but to someone that rejects God, I see it as their choice, and God is granting them their wish. If someone lives their whole life rejecting God, and
do you think that anybody wants to be tortured for eternity?
Yeah, I don't believe that's what hell is.
Oh,
and
okay.
What's
your view on hell?
I don't think any Christian should believe that.
I agree with you probably that no Christian should believe that, but a lot of them do. So maybe I just misinterpreted. What is your view on hell?
Okay, so my view of hell is that hell is a spiritual state where you're still in the presence of God, but due to sin and the way you live you've lived your life, your heart and spirit have been hardened and damaged so much to the point where God's presence goes from a feeling of fulfillment and joy and bliss to essentially suffering, not in a physical way, but
so then we do agree that and this lasts for eternity.
Yeah, I mean, eternity is it's not really understood by the human mind. It's still somewhat of a mystery, at least in Orthodox theology. You can't just the normal interpretation of eternity is time that we're experiencing now, but forever, and I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Does the suffering ever end?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. Yeah.
So it could be that you die, you
could be
experience this suffering, and then
a healing transformation.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I mean, so if that's your view, I mean, obviously there's still a degree of coercion, but it's not infinite coercive power, right? It's not like you will suffer endlessly. You will be in horrible suffering forever.
Yeah, no, not necessarily.
Yeah. So look, I mean, surely we still agree that there is some coercion there, right?
Well, the thing is Yeah,
go ahead.
You see it as coercion, but at the same time, in order for us to even have the possibility of having a genuine relationship with God, you acknowledge that we need free will, correct?
Maybe. I don't actually think free will is real, but I could imagine that you can have. I think that it's probably meaningful to say that you can still have a relationship even if there's no libertarian free will, so long as the origin of your choices come from within, rather than being kind of forced upon you.
Okay.
But yeah, we can just say, for the sake of argument, we can say, yeah, you need some degree of free will to have a relationship.
So that means that humans either have the choice to be in his presence or the choice to or I guess in his presence isn't the right way to phrase it, but they have the choice to either have a relationship with him or not. So you're saying it's a form of coercion that God would send them to hell, but don't you think it would be worse that if someone rejected and in some cases even hated or despised God, don't you think that it would be worse to bring them to heaven, even though that it would ultimately, like, it would obviously objectively be better for them, but that's not the choice they made.
Well, I would think that God, being a good being, would always just do what is best for someone, right?
Yeah,
So if you're saying it's
and how do you know them going to hell isn't what's best for them?
well, because you said it's objectively best for them to be with God.
If they had chosen to have a relationship with God.
So I would just imagine that, like, and you know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I would imagine that if this God exists and this God is, you know, all loving and wants what's best for everybody, then that God would just look at the possible options for what to do with this soul after they died and just put them in the place where they would suffer the least, or where the outcome would be, you know, maybe there would be some degree of suffering initially, and then God knows that, you know, something good would happen as a result, and so maybe there would be some initial pain, and then after that all of the pain would be gone and they would be, you know, joyful. Whatever it might be, I would imagine God would just put them in the position that is best for them, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would just argue that, well, for one, if that were the case, then I think the whole purpose of creation would be undermined. And I think that God is doing what's best for everyone. And I think that obviously if God were to exist, like us with like limited human minds and not a full understanding of God, we can't even necessarily like arrive to the conclusion that God is not doing the best for, or doing what's best for someone in their scenario.
Is it your view that God wants, so correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you said earlier that God does want a relationship with everybody, right?
Yeah.
So I would take it that, and is it also your view that having a relationship with God would be the best thing for everybody?
Yeah.
So it seems like that if God wants a relationship with everybody, and God holds the view that it would be best for everybody to have a relationship with him, then he would take at least the minimal necessary steps to ensure that that was a possibility for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people who don't have that option because they haven't even been given good reason to think that the God exists, let alone that the God loves them and, you know, would be a good relationship partner.
Yeah. So I mean, certain cases like these are accounted for, obviously. Like at the end of the day, God is ultimately just and merciful, and of course there's going to be people that don't believe in God because of pure ignorance, and that's like a different case.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who have heard about God. Maybe they're American, okay, but maybe they grew up in like the religious South, where, like, you know, they grew up in a church where they were saying, you know, the earth is 6,000 years old, and, you know, evolution is a lie, and the science textbooks are all controlled by an evil Jewish cabal. Maybe they grew up in one of these kind of like nut job churches, and they're like, that's obviously nonsense. Like, this God stuff doesn't make any sense. And so even though they're familiar with Christianity, you know, they've looked at the Bible, and, you know, they went to Sunday school or whatever, they think that all of that stuff is silly, and, you know, they just never bought into it. It seems like this person is not really having the opportunity to have a relationship with God because of the situation that they were put in.
Yeah, so from what you're describing, if someone like was taught like an incorrect interpretation of the Bible that led them away from God, that this person didn't really have like a chance to have a relationship with God based off that? Like, is that what you're...
Yeah, like, so they're familiar, like they've heard of Jesus, like they've read the Bible, but the environment that they grew up in was like an obviously nonsensical version of Christianity.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, that's what Christianity, and, like, you know, maybe it's the version of Christianity that like takes every single sentence literally, and, like, you know, doesn't leave any room for, like, you know, metaphorical interpretation or whatever. And, you know, if you hold that, if that's what you grow up in, then you're like, well, obviously this book is wrong, because, you know, the way that I learned to interpret it was through, you know, literal whatever. And so it's not like they're ignorant of Jesus. It's not like they haven't read the Bible. It's that their understanding is you know, for whatever reason, environmental or whatever, their understanding is incorrect. And so are they counted amongst the people who are ignorant?
Yeah, so for one, it's obviously hard to know the exact criteria that God will use to judge us when that time comes,
Sure.
but I would say that God considers all things, and if in this case it's not intentional, but I would say that there is a level of deception here, and it's not really at that person's fault that that's what they're being told. And hypothetically, if that's all that person was ever like told about the Bible and about God, and they just believed it because of that, then yeah, I mean, I think God would obviously consider that, and perhaps it would be just to like grant that person mercy in that case.
So it sounds like, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a similar sort of reasoning could be used to imply that everybody, except the people who are like, I believe God exists, but I hate him, except those people, everybody who's like reasonable and, you know, evaluates the stuff that they've been told with a reasonable mind, seems like everybody who doesn't believe would be granted clemency under the you know, under the guise of, not under the guise, but under the understanding of ignorance. Because, you know, an atheist, like myself, for example, you know, obviously I know about Jesus, but the stuff that I've been told, all of the stories that I've been, you know, informed of, all of the pieces of evidence that have been presented, they just don't check out. They just don't, for whatever reason, they don't settle. They're not compelling to me. They're not convincing. So it seems like, you know, is it my fault that these things aren't convincing to me? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's where that's why. Okay, well, for one, obviously I'm not God, and
Sure, of course.
I can't say for sure what's gonna happen to anyone. Like even like I can't even say who's going to be saved,
Of
or
course,
like
of
who
course.
has been saved. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's different in the case of most atheists, I guess. Like, I think that humans have an innate like desire and inclination toward like God in some form. Like humans have always been like inclined and curious towards like the idea of a God, and I think that was an intentional design by God. Um and if you arrive to the conclusion that God doesn't exist, and you say that it's like from like a point of evidence, I mean you are essentially rejecting God, and
Well,
I think
is it really a rejection if all of the world that you've been exposed to leads you to a conclusion that's at least believed to be rational?
well, you're saying it's a world that led you to that decision, but like at the end of the day, it's your own decision. Like you're saying what like the evidence you've looked at, all these things, etc., led you to like non-belief.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you are essentially like rejecting the idea or the belief of or the existence of a God.
Well, I mean, look, suppose that, I don't know, maybe I'll give an analogy just to try to illustrate what I'm getting at. Suppose that you're a forensic, what are they called? The people who like, you know, like in police procedurals, the people who like go and run the DNA tests and like swab the blood and you're one of these forensic whatevers at like a crime scene, but you're just not very good at it. So you go and you collect the blood and you take the pictures and you examine the bones, and the evidence that you've looked at just leads you to the incorrect conclusion, leads you to conclude that it's a suicide rather than a murder. Would you be like rejecting that it's a murder, or are you just wrong about it being a murder?
So can you repeat what you said? So what are you saying led
Yeah,
to
so
the
so suppose
what
that
was wrong with the evidence?
yeah, so suppose that you know, okay, so it actually was a murder, like, you know, the person was murdered, whatever, and
Yeah.
you go and you collect the bones, and then you take you take DNA tests of all of the blood and stuff, and I don't know what forensic analysts do, but you do whatever you're supposed to do, but you're just not very good at your job, and you come to the wrong conclusions based off of the evidence that you've collected. Would it be correct to say that you've rejected that it was a murder, or are you just wrong about it being a murder?
Yeah, so I see the like similarities, but I don't think that would be analogous to what we're talking about, because for one, like technically everyone has the same evidence, right? And
Yeah.
there's people on all sides of the spectrum. Like there's people that have done decades of research and have looked at evidence for like decades, and they've come to the conclusion of belief, but there's also people that have done the same exact level of research and have come to the conclusion of non-belief.
Right.
And on the other side of the spectrum, there's people that barely even know about the Bible or anything about God and have come to the conclusion of belief, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's not really about the evidence, or like somewhat of a skill of like researching or analyzing evidence, like, because if that were the case, then like if it were the case that evidence or like your ability to research would be the only factor, then that wouldn't really
I'm
make
not
much sense.
I'm not saying it's your ability to research. What I'm saying is that some people are certain ways. So, you know, I mean, surely you've met people who are just like naturally logical, and then you've met people who are naturally kind of more go with the flow, or naturally more, I don't want to say more, it's not like logic and creativity are opposites, but there are people who are like naturally more kind of like willing to accept things and be more malleable, and then there's people who are naturally very rigid in their way of thinking. What I'm saying is that some people, like you and I imagine you and I perhaps were given very similar degrees of evidence with regards to the truth of Christianity, right? Probably very, I mean, you know, we've all, like, we have access to the Bible, we have access to various, you know, church fathers and so on, and that's basically it. Maybe some miracles here and there, but that's basically it. But because of the way that I'm wired, and that because the way I'm wired is different from the way that you're wired, perhaps I am less likely to accept that evidence as being compelling for one reason or another. It doesn't seem like that there's like a choice involved when you look at evidence and decide whether it's compelling or not, you know? It seems like it's either compelling or it's not, and that's just a thing about how your brain is, maybe, or about what your experience or what your history is. It doesn't seem like there's an active choice in the matter, you know?
Yeah, I guess what you're trying to say.
So what I'm saying is that, yeah, you're right. Like maybe some other forensic analyst would have examined the exact same data and come to the correct conclusion. But the analogy here is that the atheists are like the forensic analysts who just come to the incorrect conclusion based on the data. I wouldn't then say that the forensic analysts who come to the incorrect conclusion are rejecting that it was a murder. They're just wrong. And I don't think that there's like a moral, I don't think it'd be correct to say that there's like some kind of malicious or some moral weight to being wrong about those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, again, I wouldn't really accept this analogy as completely valid in this scenario, but I understand what you're trying to say. And I mean, at the end of the day, it kind of loops back to what I said at the beginning, which is if you're deciding solely based off evidence, like, of course, not everyone is going to make that leap, right? Because at the end of the day, belief in God to some extent requires faith. And whether it's someone that has seen evidence and come to the conclusion that they believe with 100% certainty based off evidence, or someone that has not seen much evidence but still believes, like, it still requires faith at the end of the day. And so yeah, I mean, I agree that if you're making a conclusion solely off of evidence, that it's not guaranteed that you're going to believe in God. And that's why I'm saying.
But what if you're the kind of person who just for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the way they were raised, or maybe it's because of the way their brain is wired, or whatever it is, for whatever reason, they're the kind of person that only forms beliefs when they have enough evidence to support that belief. Then is that person just screwed?
Well, yeah, I mean, this also goes back to the idea of what hell actually is, and we also don't know, like, maybe if someone has just been that way their whole life, like, we don't know what God's going to do to that
That's fair.
person. We just know that God is ultimately just and merciful, and we don't have the understanding of God to know his criteria for how he's going to judge people, and we also don't know these people enough to know whether or not that's actually the case or whatever. Like,
so my contention, and by the way, that's fair, and that's a very respectable view, and I think that's a lot better than just saying, yep, they definitely go to hell. I think that's more respectable. But so my contention is merely that let's say that we have one of these people. I'm not going to say that I am one of them, because who knows, but let's say that we have one of these people who's like really rigid in the way that they think, and they're very they're like, if I can't see it or read it or do an experiment or provide an argument, then I don't believe it, right? They're just very rigid that way. It seems like God would still want a relationship with them, because God wants a relationship with everybody. And so God would know, hey, for this guy in particular, I got to give him something extra, because there's no way for me to have a relationship with him just because of the way he is. So I got to give him something extra so that he can finally acknowledge that I exist, and then he can choose to have a relationship with me or not. It seems like that should happen if it's true that God wants a relationship with everybody. But I mean, clearly that's not going to happen all the time, right? There are going to be people who are like that, who just never get the evidence, who never get the evidence that they need in order to form that belief.
Yeah. So for one, I would argue that does happen, and that's actually a lot of like testimonies that you'll hear is that people.
Does it happen every time?
No, but I wouldn't argue that you can't like say it should happen every time.
Then if it doesn't happen every time, then there's at least one person that God doesn't care to have a relationship with.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily that, and
well, I mean, take the one person that it doesn't happen for, right? Suppose, I mean, I imagine we can agree that this has happened at least once, right? At least once in history. Yeah. Well, then God knew from the get-go, because God's all-knowing, what kind of person this person is, right? He knew that, just presenting them with the Bible, he knew that, presenting him with the stories of the early church fathers, he knew that presenting him with, these philosophical arguments, he knew that those wouldn't be enough. And so even though he knew that all of the stuff that would be presented wouldn't be enough, he doesn't, provide a little bit of an extra nudge. Because if he did provide that extra nudge, the extra nudge that was enough, then that person wouldn't have not believed. So it seems like that God knew that there would be no possibility of a relationship, and then didn't take the actions necessary to even make a relationship possible.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, like, I think if God were to make his existence known to all of mankind, then that would undermine.
Well, it doesn't have to be to all of mankind, just to the people who need it.
Well, there's everyone needs it, though. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, look, but what I mean is the people who, like, certainly are not going to be able to have a relationship without this kind of hard evidence, Because
that's practically it. That's practically everyone.
It's not. I mean, because there's no hard evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. We have like testimony, right? And so, like most people who believe in Jesus don't believe in Jesus because they have hard evidence. They believe in Jesus because there's more softer kinds of evidence, or there's things that kind of align with their personal philosophies or whatever it might be. But there are going to be some people who need that hard evidence, and God is seemingly not providing it.
Yeah, I mean, and the problem is that there is like the fact that these people don't have these like levels of evidence. It's not God's fault, right? It's a result of free will, whether it's the person is being told lies by someone, or the person is choosing not to look into evidence, or the person is like seeing this evidence and still rejecting it. Like,
well, didn't we just agree that there just isn't any like hard evidence that, you know, Jesus rose from the dead, for example?
yeah,
So if that's the case, and the kind of person we're talking about is the kind of person that needs hard evidence, well, there is no hard evidence. So this isn't a question of free will. There just isn't hard evidence for it. And the person, because of the way they are, they're the kind of person who needs hard evidence to believe something.
yeah, but it's pretty difficult because this is something like incredibly complex, and we're reducing it just down to like them being quote unquote the way they are. Like,
I mean,
there's
sure,
just
but
a
you've
plethora
met
of
people.
factors.
You've met people that like this, I'm sure.
To a certain extent, I mean, I think there's just a plethora of factors involved, and we also like, maybe this isn't the most like productive topic of conversation, because at the end of the day, like, the answer is we know that God is ultimately just, and we don't fully understand God, and we don't fully understand how he works. But obviously, as a Christian, someone who believes in God, there is just a level of trust that God is the ultimate judge and will do what is ultimately just, and us as humans don't even necessarily understand what that is. So
And we can move off this topic, or we can even call it here if you want. But what I'm essentially raising is something called the problem of divine hiddenness. If you're not familiar with it, it might be something that you're interested in reading, just to see what the apologetics are for it. Basically, the problem is, look, if God wants a relationship with everybody, and God knows what would be required to have a relationship with everybody, then it just seems like everybody should have a relationship with God. Whether it's a hateful one or not is a different story. But not everybody has a relationship with God. So either God doesn't want a relationship with everybody, God doesn't have the power to have a relationship with everybody, or God doesn't know who doesn't have a relationship with him. So it's a variant of kind of like a problem of evil. So it might be interesting for you at least to look into it.
Yeah.
Just because, then you can learn about what the kind of traditional responses are and things like that.
Yeah, we can move off it. I just think that like presupposes a few things, and it's kind of hard to assert.
Yeah, sure. Actually, Christian Crusader, you're always welcome to come back another time, but because we've kind of closed off that topic, I'm going to let you go because you've been on for almost an hour. Is that fair?
All right. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for being here. I do appreciate you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Of course. Have a good one.
He was super good faith and super chill. I actually really appreciated that conversation. I thought it was a good conversation. So yeah, W guest. Let's read some super chats, and then we will move on to the next guest. Make sure that I don't miss any. We just have the one super chat from Chase. With the $5, by forcing faith to be why you believe, God intentionally guaranteed a non-zero amount of people would go to hell. He could have made it any other way. Yeah, so that's roughly the problem of divine hiddenness, isn't it? And from Philo Dragon, thank you so much, bud. It's not Santa Claus's fault that he doesn't show up. It's your fault for not believing in him. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's roughly it. Yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. All right, let's bring up our next guest. Let's bring up. Have I spoken with Jesus as King lately? Is this a? I don't think I've spoken with Jesus as King. So let's bring up Jesus as King. Jesus is King.
Hello.
How's it going?
How's it going?
I'm doing all right. Jesus is King. Do you? I'm going to assume that you're Christian. Is that fair?
Obviously, yep.
Okay. So I'm not. What would you say is the best argument or best piece of evidence, or most reasonable justification that might convince me that Jesus is in fact King?
Well, I think it's quite obvious just by observing the natural world. I think it's quite obvious. I think it's within your heart. I think you're just rejecting it.
It's within my heart. Well, I'm all for psychoanalysis, but I'm trying to convince you, or not convince you, sorry, trying to convey to you that I just don't believe this. It seems fake. So why should I think it's not?
It's not fake. I think you're doing this to get super chats. I think it's quite
so.
obvious that
I was
God
doing
exists.
this before I was doing this on YouTube, and if you're
Mhm.
not on YouTube, there's no super chats.
Well, you still get paid from TikTok viewership.
No, not unless people send donations, and people don't send donations very frequently on TikTok.
Like I don't know why you reject God. It's just so obvious.
It seems obviously wrong. It seems like obviously wrong to me.
Okay, like I obviously have a higher IQ than you, and I believe in God.
Obviously, yeah, obviously. But obviously, Stephen Hawking had a higher IQ than you, and Stephen Hawking didn't believe in God.
No, I have a higher IQ than Stephen Hawking.
Are you sure?
100%.
100% sure.
I mean, he can't even move. Like,
good troll, good troll. That is funny, but irrelevant. All right, Jesus is King. I'm gonna let you go if you don't want to have a conversation.
I want to have a conversation.
Okay, bye. Bro can't even keep a straight face. It's okay. Not everybody's equipped for it. Let's talk to Submitter 2280. Submitter, how's it going?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Submitter, do you believe in God?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I have a short time, but I just want to share some important information that you may have not heard about.
Yeah, I'd love to. Just before we get started, do you believe, you said you believe in God. Are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim, a Hindu? Are you a Buddhist of some kind?
I'm a submitter, basically. We worship God alone, and we believe the so-called three monotheistic religions have deviated with a lot of man-made innovations. We believe in the evolution, that it's a divinely guided process, and we believe in the Big Bang theory. It's not a theory anymore.
Okay, so you're like evidence for it. So you're like some like extra new religion thing, but you basically believe in a monotheistic thing. Okay, go ahead. So what's the evidence? What's the argument?
It's actually not new. Historically, the religion that's supposed to be about God, it became about the man.
Okay,
this happened to the current religion.
So however old it is, what's the evidence for it?
The evidence for it is, first of all, I was atheist myself.
Okay. So what was the evidence for it? It doesn't really matter to me that you used to be an atheist.
The discovery of code 19 in 1974, which is embedded inside the Quran. It's so vast that it has basically a numerical, mathematical miracle. So if you remove one single letter...
So there's a mathematical miracle in the Quran, okay.
Correct. And if you remove a single letter, the whole mathematical system collapses.
Okay.
And it's just not logical that Muhammad, at that age of ignorance, where there was no computer, there was no calculator, would have made such a complete mathematical system in the Quran, which is the preservation of the Quran, basically.
Okay, so I'm not particularly convinced by the claims of mathematical miracles, because mathematical miracles are almost exclusively post hoc. So I'm not sure why I should think that any of this is evidence of God.
So here's the thing, it's not limited to the book. For example, the sun, the moon, and the earth aligns every 19 years. And we didn't choose this number, it's in the scripture, and the name of the chapter is the hidden secret. Why should I believe that? Pardon? Because it's aligned, basically mathematics is a universal language.
So when you say that the sun, the moon, and the earth align every 19 years, what do you mean?
This is scientifically proven, no?
Are you just talking about an eclipse?
Yes.
So solar eclipses or lunar eclipses?
Lunar.
So lunar eclipses happen like all the time, like a few times a year, right? Lunar eclipses happen 2.28 times every year, with at least 2 every year. So it's not every 19 years, it's at least twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not true that it's every 19 years.
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but there's a big list. It's just one example I mentioned. Maybe I'm mistaken. But the point is that mathematics is a universal language, like Galileo said. Mathematics is what God wrote the universe. I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
So I just want to invite you at your free time just to have a look, and maybe later on I will collect your feedback if you don't mind, because it's so vast that digits reach up to 20, 28, 29,000 letters, still multiple of 19. And imagine if there is one letter missing.
I don't know what the claim is that you're making.
basically, so I give you a little bit more information from the beginning. So there's a chapter in the Quran, which is chapter 74. The name of the chapter is The Hidden Secret. And
So
there's a verse in the Quran.
Just because I'm curious, what's the Arabic word, or what's the Arabic word for the hidden secret?
Al-Mudassir.
Okay. And so okay, so that's what the, oh sorry, I'm trying to copy. Why is it pasting it in? It's not pasting it in. This is so annoying. Okay, so that's the name of the chapter. Fine.
Yes, chapter 74.
Okay, so we're in. So, I just Googled this. Not an Arabic speaker, but apparently, at least according to Wikipedia, it means the cloaked one, or the man wearing a cloak.
Something that is hidden in plain sight, basically. Because
Okay,
remember,
so
Arabic has multiple meanings. You know, when you search in maybe translation of English, may show in different form. But in Arabic, means something that is hidden in plain sight. But that's
is there
these
a,
are.
is there like a? I can just, there we go. That I can copy and paste, and I can just go to Google Translate, because like I'm just not seeing that translation anywhere. Like it's the enshrouded, the cloaked. But okay,
Yeah.
okay, so it has something to do with something being covered. Sure.
Yes.
What is
just
the,
remember
so what's
that,
the relevant verse?
just to make a point that nobody speaks now 7th century Qurayshi Arabic. So
Okay.
it might not be wise to look at the modern day.
But importantly, neither do you. So how do you know what the translation is?
Exactly. This is what I was going to explain.
Right. So what's the relevant
So,
verse that I'm supposed to look at? Verse 19?
Verse 74, sorry, chapter 74, verse 30. It's
30.
mentioned over it is 19.
Okay. So it says there are 19 in charge of it. At least that's an English, that is an English translation. If you prefer some other translation, feel free to tell me what it is. That's just what I'm on Quran.com, I'm on Quran.com, and that's what the translation is.
So the next verse explains the function of it.
Okay. So what is it supposed to be? What's the miracle that's happening here?
So the first, it's mentioned the function that is to convince the people that this is a divine scripture, to convince the followers of previous scriptures, such as Jews and Christians, that this is the divine scripture from God, and to strengthen the faith of the faithful. So the function of this is mentioned in the next verse, 74:31.
So it looks like what's being described is that there are 19 angels in charge of the hellfire, or the scorching fire.
Yes.
Is that correct? So where's the
Yes,
mathematical miracle?
So the question is how these 19 angels in the hell will increase the faith of the faithful. Because in Arabic it's mentioned.
Well, wait a minute.
It's
Isn't there supposed to be a mathematical miracle somewhere?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to reach there. So it's mentioned iddatuhum, their number. It didn't mention the angels. It's mentioned their number.
There are 19 in charge of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Their number, iddatuhum in Arabic.
So,
and the next verse is talking about this.
Hold on,
increase in faith.
Somebody who knows more about the Quran than I do is interested in coming up, so I'm going to bring them up. Hey, Ems, how's it going?
Hey, what's up?
I'm doing all right.
This is a pretty new apologetic take, and it's sad. It's very sad.
So
can
what's
you give me the number of the verse again?
It's 74:30 and 74:31. What's the mathematical miracle here, submitter?
So it's basically all the Quran is mathematically composed, and the common denominator, what do you call, is number 19. So basically, a number of chapters, number of verses, number of letters, all the numbers that are mentioned are multiple of 19.
All of the numbers that are mentioned are a multiple of 19, really?
Yeah. For example, Moses stayed in Mount Sinai 40 days, or all the numbers which you select all over the Quran, you add them together, it's multiple of 19. You can use online.
So all of the numbers that
so
if you add
40
them,
is not 40 is not divided by 19. Number one. Number two.
I didn't say 40. You
literally said 40. And then 114. That is divided by 19. Yes, the number of chapters in the Quran are divided by 19. The time Moses spent, the time that Moses spent on the mountain, that is not divisible by 14.
Brother, you missed my point. All the numbers I said, all over the Quran. So
sure.
any number
this is a number then. This is a number that is mentioned. Another number that is mentioned is 300. Sure, 300 is
You
not
have to
divisible
add them
by 19.
together.
Add every number in the Quran, every single number.
Would you like me to explain?
So you're going to add every single number in the Quran.
Yes, you have to add them together, not one by one separate.
Sure, go ahead and do that.
So, for example, Noah stayed with its people 900 years, 1,000 years less 50. So you put 1,000, then plus 50, then Moses 40, all the numbers that are mentioned.
So
this is only one of them.
Is there somewhere I can go find where they will go over adding up all of the numbers mentioned in the Quran? Because otherwise, you're just saying, trust me, bro.
No, yeah, absolutely. I can share with you.
And by the way, just as an aside, if you give me a random number, if the number is sufficiently large, the probability that the number will be divisible by 19 is a little bit more than 5%. So this is not like some miraculous thing. If you give me a list of 20 random numbers, the odds that at least one of them will be divisible by 19 is pretty high.
But it goes beyond that. Even the grammatical value,
what's the actual miracle?
Yes. Even the grammatical value of the words abjad, the brother may be aware, even those are multiple of 19.
Can you give me the grammatical value of the quote unquote abjad? Go ahead.
Sorry, mathematical value of? I have the list. I don't memorize them, but I have the list.
In Arabic grammar, by the way. But go ahead.
I have the list. I can, God willing, share whoever interested to have a look. But the point is that the whole Quran, number of verses, number of letters. For example, you can count the first chapter, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Count right now. You will see it's 19.
It depends. No, it depends. It depends. Which reading of the Quran are you going to read?
For example, let's say half. It's same.
Wait a minute.
No, it's not the same. It is not the same.
Just as a quick check, there are 6,236 verses in the Quran that is not divisible by 19.
34. Incorrect. It's not 36, 34, because the chapter 9, the last 2 verses does not belong to the Quran.
So 6,234 is also not divisible by 19.
And I don't know how you're calculating. I have the list. It is, sir. This is
I'm calculating with a calculator.
I will.
Here's a calculator.
6,234
by 19 is 328.1 and change.
And by the way, the number of verses differs between the types of Qurans. So
sure. There's also I found the number of words in the Quran. We can see if that's divisible by 19, which is 157,935. That's also not divisible by 19. It gives you 8,312.37 and change. What about the number of non-repeated words? 5,277. That's not divisible by 19. We can look at the number of letters. Is that divisible by 19? Also not divisible by 19. So where's the 19?
And what did he say about the
I found it. Hold on. So I'm sorry, Ems. I found the this thing has a Wikipedia page. This idea. It's like Quran code, and it's specifically about the number 19. Here, I'll pull it up for everybody. So this is a source for what he's talking about. So I guess, so here's some examples of things that involve the number 19. So it's the Quranic opening formula, which with one exception is at the beginning of every surah of the Quran, consists of exactly 19 letters. The first word of the Bismillah-ism name without contraction occurs 19 times in the Quran. The second word of the Bismillah Allah occurs 2,698. So it's this list of things.
Right, correct.
That you didn't know the argument you were coming to present.
You basically misunderstood. For example, I said if you count...
Read the code, the part where it says... This is I can submit. When it says the number of verses, it mentions the number of verses. Do you see it?
It says the total number of verses in the Quran, including all unnumbered Bismillahs, is 6,346. The cross sum of 6,346, which is you add up the numbers, is 19.
And that also is them picking a specific type or reading of the Quran, because all the Qurans have different number of verses, they have different number of letters, they have different beginnings of chapters, etc. So
I
they're
give you a
choosing specific clips.
example.
Just a
I
second,
give you
just Habibi, just a second. So they're choosing specific like versions of the Quran, and then just doing whatever the fuck they're doing. Like why is the cross sum like mattering at all?
Here's another one.
Dr. Blitz, can I explain? I don't want to speak to this gentleman. He's using bad language also.
The multiplication factors of the words of the Bismillah gives 152, which is itself 19 times 8. If you multiply the factors of the word, like what are we doing here? Are we just like doing whatever we can, manipulating the numbers in whatever we can to try to get something that's a multiple of 19? Like,
can I add something, if you don't mind? For more than 1400 years, nobody knew what is the initials of the Quran stands for. For example, some chapters starts Alif Lam Mim, ALM. Some chapters starts with Qaf, Q. Some chapters starts. So nobody knew. Even right now, you speak to a lot of scholars. They have no idea what these initials are. But when you count this in that chapter, for example, Alif Lam Mim, all the alifs are multiple of 19 in the same chapter. All the memes, if you
wait,
count,
you said all the alifs are multiples of 19?
Correct. In that chapter, you will count all the alifs. It's multiple of 19.
Okay, let's do that quickly. Which Alif Lam Mim do you want?
Are we going to the first book? The first chapter?
It is the second chapter.
Second chapter. Okay, we're going to the second chapter. Okay.
Just Control F and then Alif, but I'm gonna do it on my end because I have an Arabic keyboard. Just give me a sec.
I don't even know what an Aleph looks like in Arabic.
It's just it's the number 1.
I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, hold on, we can figure this out. Arabic alphabet. Then we can go here. And then here's an Aleph. So we want the version that shows up in, I don't know, contextual forms, maybe? We can Control C that, and then we can paste it. Shows up 38 times. It doesn't show up 19 times. Let's see if we can find it.
No.
No? Is that not the right thing?
The Quran.com app is not going to work well.
Oh, no. Okay. Okay, well, we tried. 38 is divisible by 19, so maybe he gets a win here.
Yeah, as I said, it's vast. It's so much that and more has been discovered.
By the way,
so it is 4,715, it appears. And
just as an aside, submitter, do you think that if you say, well, the number of alifs in the second chapter of the Quran is divisible by 19, do you think that that's like going to be compelling to any atheist that God is real?
So here's how I'm looking at it, because I was atheist myself. What kind of evidence do you expect to see from God?
It is not divisible. I'll answer that. Yep. But the number of alifs is not divisible by 19. It is 4,715. Divide that by 19, you have a remainder of 157. 0.157.
Yeah. Okay. So the total number of alifs is not divisible by 19.
These are long being 35 years have been debated. We have the list. We have to look in the old manuscripts also. I give you one example. Even letter of Nuns were disputed. They said, no, you are counting it wrong. Then we found all manuscript which was correct.
So you have differences in manuscripts. Okay, good. Submitter. A better evidence, and I think Dr. Blitz would agree with me, is, for example, if they prophesied something very specific at a specific date in which it did actually come to happen, or maybe present you, for example, scientific knowledge that was literally impossible to know at the time, for example, telling you, explaining quantum physics, for example.
That would have been impressive, yeah.
7th century.
So is it a coincidence for you that in chapter 19 is mentioned, the function is mentioned, and then we have this system in the Quran?
Yeah. It is not mentioned and it's not described. It is not described even at all.
It is
when it says
described.
it doesn't talk about functions or...
Read the next verse.
What does the next verse say?
It increases the faith of the faithful
it
Jamil.
convinced the Jews and
Yeah.
Christians
Do you
that
know what
this
this
is
is
the divine
talking about?
space.
Do you know what this is talking about? This is
Definitely
talking
not the
about,
hell.
this is talking about, no, this is again, if you go to the tafsir and the classical scholars, they're talking about the 19 angels on the doors of hell, them being a ibra, which is again like, in English, that would be like a sign to those who believe. It's going to increase their faith because again, they believe in angels that are going to guard hell. And to those who are disbelievers, it is going to be torment to them.
Yeah, so one question. How does the angels, the guardians of hell, gonna increase the faith of the faithful? That would be too
In the
late.
same way that hell itself is described as increasing faith.
Yeah, but how does it increase the faith of the Jews or the Christians, the guardians of hell? Because it's mentioned their number, iddatahum. So it doesn't make sense.
So it is talking about their number of the angels is 19. Then it talks about the angels increasing so and so.
Yeah, you're right. But how this, I'm asking, how
It doesn't say that their
gonna
number is
increase
the one that is
faith of the
increasing it.
faithful?
Again. It doesn't say their number is the one that is increasing so and so. It says that the angels themselves are the ones increasing so and so, because again, you take them as a ibra, in the same way that when God talks about hell, he tells you that hell is a sign that increases the faith of the faithful, using fear, and it causes it is torment for those who do not believe. In the same exact sense.
First of all, that is your interpretation, brother.
That is not
If
my
you read the
interpretation,
whole
that is the
chapter,
interpretation of
it's
Ibn
very
Kathir,
interesting.
Qurtubi, At-Tabari, Jalalain, etc. You can literally go
It's
to
very
the
interesting. The
interpretation of the
next,
classical scholars. Habibi, if you go
sorry,
to the
let me
interpretation of the classical scholars, this is exactly what they say verbatim.
So, brother, if you read the whole chapter, it's very interesting. The verses ahead says, people will say this is man-made, this is magic. You see, what you're claiming is already also mentioned there. They're saying this is man-made.
No, I
In
didn't
the
say it
same
is magic.
chapter.
Number one. Number
He
two,
didn't
sure.
say that, he didn't
Which
say
verse?
that it was man-made.
Which
If
verse?
you read the whole chapter, it's referring, it's saying it's one of the great miracles. Yeah, if you read the
Where
whole
does it say that? Go
chapter,
ahead. No, which verses? Go ahead. Which verses? Go ahead.
just read the whole chapter, you will see.
I just
Read the whole
skimmed through
chapter.
it. I don't see
34.
anything about anything being man-made.
Okay, I will share with you now.
Please.
Mhm. I hate numerology. That shit is boring.
Numerology, it's not really convincing to anybody except the people who already believe. That's the trouble.
And even to those who believe.
I mean, I'm sure it's convincing to this guy, but he already believed, so. The thing about numerology is that, like, it's always, you can never predict where, what do I want to say? If it were possible to somehow predict where these numerical coincidences should show up, and then you go and check and they are actually there, then that would be notable. But if you're just looking anytime the number 19 shows up in one way or another, you will find in some places the number 19 does show up, and in other places it doesn't. And so they'll just ignore all of the places where it doesn't show up. For example, this verse about the angels guarding hell, why isn't it verse 19?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That would be better.
The human made is mentioned 74:25, but it's worth to read the whole chapter because it's talking a miracle. Right? It's talking about that this is one of the great miracles.
That's talking about that's just talking about the talk. Doesn't say anything about it being made.
It says قول البشر, the saying of man.
Yeah, it's just the talk of a mortal. It doesn't say that like something is man-made. We can just go look at the whole text if you want in English, of course, because you know I'm a heathen or something.
If you want to read the correct translation, because
there is no
as I
correct
said,
translation.
some of the translations have been like trying to use outside sources or today's modern. If you read the God Authorized English version, which is translation by Dr. Rashad Khalifa, basically the translation. Can I finish?
There is no such thing. There is no such thing as a correct English translation.
The correct message of the verse.
You
not just
wrapped in your cloak, arise and give warning. Proclaim the greatness of your Lord. Cleanse yourself. Keep away from all filth. Do not be overwhelmed and weaken. Be steadfast in your Lord's cause. When the trumpet sounds, that will be a day of anguish for the disbelievers. They will have no ease. Prophet, leave me to deal with the one I created helpless, then gave vast wealth, and sons by his side, making everything easy for him. Yet he still hopes I will give him more. No, he has been stubbornly hostile to our revelation. I will inflict a spiraling torment on him. He planned and plotted, devilishly he plotted, ferociously he plotted, and looked, and frowned and scowled, and turned away and behaved arrogantly, and said, this is just old sorcery, just the talk of a mortal. So what's being conveyed here is that you have a disbeliever saying, the things that Muhammad was saying were just the talk of a mortal. This is not saying
Prophet is not there. That's what I'm saying. This is wrong translation.
It is
Now
not.
read
I read
Rashad
Arabic.
Khalifa
I read
translation.
Arabic. No. I
I'm
read
sorry,
Arabic.
who's the mortal that's being referred to here?
So I'm gonna give you a better translation, Blitz.
Sure.
In this, this again, إلا is nothing but قول, the saying of al-bashar, people or men, humans.
Oh, okay. Yes.
You can actually go word for word.
So a better translation is just that the non-believers, they will say this is just the talk of people, right? It's not saying that like some specific like a numerical coincidence is like a man-made construction. He's just saying that like these stories, this is just like what people say.
Would you mind to read now the same verses you read by?
I kind of would, just because it seems like we're not really making any progress here. Do you think, and just to back up a little bit, do you think that numerical coincidences tend to be convincing to people who don't already believe in them?
So rephrase the question. I didn't get it.
Do you think that numerical coincidences, like what we're seeing here, are convincing to anybody who doesn't already agree with you?
Well, it depends how you look at it. I don't see it as a coincidence because it's all over the Quran, and you just.
But people who don't already believe with you, people who don't already believe with you, people who don't already agree with you, will not see them as miracles. They will see them as coincidences.
Yeah, that's fine. It's controlled by God.
How will that convince anybody?
Well, it's mentioned there. This will just increase the faith of the faithful.
Okay.
And those
so
who
then why
want to sincerely looking for.
Yes. Why did you offer this as evidence as evidence that would convince me if your own book yourself? That's not good English. If your own book says it will not increase the faith of the faithless.
Yeah, of course. So this is basically the Quran is a book of guidance and misguidance. Guidance for the sincere, misguidance for those who are looking for conflicts and faults.
Okay, so why did you give this to me as evidence when I'm not somebody who's already one of these people?
To be honest, to be truthful, my target was not you. For others who are listening, that maybe a few sincere guys.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here, Ems.
That was boring. What the fuck?
It was boring, and also it was dishonest on his end, which is kind of a bummer.
How have you been, by the way?
I'm doing okay. My incision is healing up nicely.
That's good.
There was a so I thought I had an infection last week in the incision, and it was like the pain was horrible. It turns out that so I have internal sutures, right? And it turns out usually from what my surgeon said is that typically for Americans, and he's German, but he's practiced in America for a long time. Typically for Americans, the internal sutures never really have an issue pushing through the skin because usually there's a layer of fat in between the abdominal muscles and the skin. I don't really have much of that. And so what I thought was the infection and what was causing the severe pain is that one of the internal sutures was poking out. And it was basically irritating the incision significantly. So that's what happened there, but otherwise I'm doing okay.
I mean, it is better than what we thought it was.
Oh, so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm healing up well. Still still not allowed to lift more than 15 pounds, but I'm doing okay. But I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, likewise, take care. Okay. Ems is a physician, so that's why it was, he may have been interested in that. The rest of y'all maybe not. All right, let's read some super chats and then we'll bring on our next guest. We have a super chat from Mindas with the €2. M's come up, Muslims, why do I hear boss music, right? Like Dark Souls for them. For Dr. Fudge with the $10, donating for M's and his magical voice. He does have a magical voice. Look, I'm going to be 100% honest here. When I first met M's, and this was a long time ago, I thought it's not his real voice, by the way. At least I understand that it's a voice changer because, he is fearful for his life. I thought that his voice changer was so annoying, but having interacted with him a lot. Oh, it is? Wait, that's your real voice? I thought you used a voice changer. Anyway, having interacted with you a lot, I actually have grown to quite like it. Yeah, it used to, I don't know, something about it is that it used to bother me, but now that we've interacted more, I like it a lot more. So don't hate me. I'm sorry. It is quite magical. All right, and from the distant gray with the 1919 from 1919. All right, let's bring up our next guest. Let me make sure that I don't have anybody. I'm sure that I do have people waiting in the Discord queue. So let's bring up a guest from the Discord queue. Let's bring up Hobo. Bring up Hobo. Hobo, how's it going? You have to unmute yourself, Hobo.
Hey, yep, sorry. I just had to get my audio right because I had you on
Why
my
am I
phone.
hearing you from... I'm hearing you from the wrong place. One sec. Okay, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. It was coming from my monitor for some reason. All right, Hobo.
Oh, okay.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Do you believe in a God,
thanks for having
sir?
me. Yes, I do. I'm a Christian.
Okay, that works. That makes it easy. Then we don't have to argue about what words mean. So, Hobo,
Right.
I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in a God. What would you say is the best piece of evidence or the best argument or, you know, the best justification you can offer me that Christianity is the correct ideology?
Absolutely. I have a few of them,
Sure.
but in order to understand like which one might work best for you, do you mind if I ask you one or two questions first? 'Cause
Absolutely,
I've
go
never
ahead.
really watched your stream or anything. So my first question would be like, what is your intention with the stream to come to a better understanding of what belief is for other people, or is your intention for the stream to actually like be convinced of it? I don't mean that in like a negative way.
So it's to actually be convinced. Like, look, I mean, really, this is more of a prompt to prompt discussions about, you know, religious tradition. I don't think that there's a God and somebody else will, and then we'll have a debate, have an argument, whatever. But it is true. If somebody can offer me a good, compelling argument, I want to know it because I want to know I want to believe true things. So if you got something, I'm all ears.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think what I'll start with, because I've listened for about like 30 minutes or so, you seem to be more of a what's the Roman word for it? I forgot, but more like a logical person. You want to see a consistent evidence base for it.
Yeah,
For the
or maybe
belief in
some
God.
philosophical argument, or maybe some, you know, just something, right? Maybe some historical data, whatever it might be.
Right. Okay. So for the historical data, I believe there's a lot of it. It would take me like a long time to go through the historical evidence of Christ. I think most historians would agree that he was a real person that exists. Historical evidence for his resurrection is really the sticking point there. And what that really heavily falls upon in most arguments is the 500 martyrs that died for that. That kind of narrows itself down. Yeah, there were.
They died for
I believe
what? You
I might
cut
be
out for
getting
a
that.
second.
Sorry about that. I think the historical argument for Christ's resurrection comes down to I believe it was 500 people died for the faith after Christ, after the crucifixion of Christ, to say that he was resurrected, that they were believers, and that they suffered horribly for that. And so like one of two ways on it. I think some people will come to the conclusion that they died in a way that was they died for a belief that they at least held sincerely, and some people will come to the conclusion that they died for other more like nefarious reasons. So I don't really want to go into
who are these 500 martyrs?
I don't personally like know all of their names or anything. These are a lot of things I've heard, and I apologize. You know, I'm not a professional. I don't have like a long. I don't have a lot of notes on it, but I do
So
know
I think that you're just mixing up two things. So I think it's like Paul says that there are 500 eyewitnesses, and then separately, people say that the apostles were murdered, but there weren't 500 apostles that were murdered.
You're so right about that. I did mix those up. I apologize. I am kind of a little bit nervous. Like I don't usually get on the stream and do this kind of thing. So
it's fine. You're good.
No, you're right. Yeah. But actually, I was also a very logical person when it came to belief in God. Like from 13 to 19 or so, I really struggled with this. And there are a couple of things that make sense to me. I don't know if they'll make sense to you, but my main one is the causality argument, which is I think you already know it, right? You know, basically everything is caused by something else. You'll have to be a little bit more
specific. Go ahead.
Okay, so everything is caused by something else. So
everything?
Yes, everything. So grass growing is caused by rain, which is caused by evaporation, which is caused by the existence of water, which is caused by some cosmic accident, which is caused by the Big Bang, which is caused by what? So, like, my
Is God caused by something?
That's exactly what I'm getting to. So my contention is that God is the uncaused cause. He is something that exists.
So then it's not true that everything is caused by something.
If you yes, in the way that you're describing it, that semantically is true. But what I'm arguing is that God exists outside of everything. It's just true.
If your claim is that God, if your claim is that everything is caused by something,
outside of everything, right? But everything refers to everything that is in this realm, right? I mean,
okay. So when you say everything, you don't mean what the word everything means.
Sure. Let's say that.
Okay, so you mean like stuff in the stuff in the universe is caused.
Yes. Yeah. Everything except for God is caused. So God is the uncaused cause.
So could I just say that everything except the universe is caused?
You could say that, but it would be just as we could say. I'll just say ridiculous. I don't think it's ridiculous, but it would be just as ridiculous of a belief to believe that the universe spontaneously existed as it would be to believe that God spontaneously existed.
Are you sure? Because the spontaneous existence business, if you think that the universe is not caused, then you could just say that the universe, the universe exists and that's just that. It wasn't caused to exist. Similarly, you would say that God just exists and it wasn't caused to exist. But that's not the only part of the statement. The other part of the statement is that the universe, it's the universe versus God. Now, you and I both know that the universe exists.
Right.
We disagree on whether God exists. So at least as far as the statement, the universe is uncaused, there is something about the universe being uncaused, which is more plausible than God being uncaused, because we're not even in agreement that God exists, but we are in agreement that the universe exists.
I can see where you're going with that, but I think that exists. That argument exists outside of the argument of what caused what we're seeing, because we can agree that the universe exists, but what we don't agree on is how the universe came to be. I believe it came to be from a divine state that God Himself created the universe. You believe that the universe itself was an uncaused cause, but I think that those are both an equally equally hard to accept from a logical standpoint, because science is always looking for the beginning, right? Like that's how we discovered the Big Bang. We kept looking and looking for what was first, but
that's not like historically accurate. It's just not the case that science is always looking for the beginning. But
I think it.
I mean that's not why the Big Bang was proposed. The Big Bang, the Big Bang wasn't proposed. Like historically, it's just not true. Prior to the Big Bang being proposed, the kind of mainstream view was that the universe existed forever.
Interesting. Okay.
And so it wasn't like they didn't know where the universe came from, and then somebody came up with the Big Bang, and now it's just not historically the case. But more than that, the point is the point is merely that we're both proposing that something is uncaused. Sure.
Right.
I'm proposing that the thing is uncaused is something that we both agree exists. You're proposing that there's something that's uncaused, which we don't both agree that exists. We don't both agree that it exists. So intrinsically, the claim that I'm making is going to be more plausible because it relies on something that we can confirm exists already. But the claim that you're making relies on, or rather the argument that you're presenting, what you're calling the argument from causation, is trying to be an argument for God's existence. So if you're trying to prove that God exists, you can't then also say that it's plausible that God already exists as part of the argument.
Well, okay.
It becomes kind of circular.
The thing is that, but it's supposed to be circular. I don't think that God's existence can really live within the logic of our finite minds.
So it's not logical there's no logical way to believe that God exists?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't think that there's a way to have enough evidence. I don't think there's a way to have enough logical arguments. I don't think there's a way to get there through in such a way that you could scientifically prove the existence of God. I don't think that's possible.
So you're telling me that it's not possible to logically conclude that God exists?
Yeah, I think that there are ways that you can come close. I think that like the argument for causality is I think is a good example. I think that there's different things I could propose to you. Like I love Pascal's wager. I think it's actually fairly succinct and sound, but I don't think that you can convince one person, like one person's mind, to believe in something if they need hard evidence. I think
Well,
what
look,
has
I'm
to
not
happen
asking
is,
for
wait,
like,
hang on just a
I'm
second.
not
Let me
asking for hard
finish out
evidence.
what
I'm just
saying.
asking for an argument.
Okay, what I'm arguing is that in order for somebody to take like you could call it a leap of faith, right? But let's not even put faith in the divine, right? Like let's say you're trying to delve into a brand new topic that you have no idea about, or and that you
Sure.
that for whatever reason you need to become good at. You have to take it's sort of like this might be a funny example, but you remember like Jake from Adventure Time? Did you ever watch that?
I watched it
where he
a little
says,
bit,
a
but
little
not
bit. Well,
much.
there's like this one episode where basically he says that we all suck in the beginning, and you have to have this sort of courage to be willing to suck at it in order to learn about it, right?
Well, sure, I agree with that, but that's different from a leap of faith.
I'm getting there.
Okay,
I
well,
think
hopefully the plane is landing soon.
Sure, I think that aligns somewhat with the feeling that the feeling of courage that it takes to admit that we don't know everything and that we can't know everything. Like I believe it. I could be getting it wrong. It might be Socrates or Aristotle. One of them, intelligent mind, is to be able to hold two ideas in contradiction that are both complementary and contradictory to each other, and hold them both as true. So that would indicate that
there's no way that like Socrates or Plato said that.
It was one of them. I know that's a.
So what's the quote? A sign of an intelligent mind is the ability to hold two views in contradiction.
Yeah, or
so this is
two arguments in your head
to be clear, this is F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was an author, or someone else's. Yeah, apparently it's a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald. Okay. And the idea is not to believe that both of them are true, but to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time.
Okay.
Not to. It's just hold them both in this at the same hold. So I'll read the full quote. Before I go on with this short history, let me make a general observation. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability. Sorry, is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise. This philosophy fitted onto my early adult life when I saw the improbable, the implausible, often the impossible come true. That's what the quote is. It's not about believing two contradictory things simultaneously. It's about recognizing, in his case, recognizing that things are hopeless, but still being determined to do otherwise.
Okay. Yeah. Well, see that what if the idea of knowing everything or being able to prove like anything is hopeless and still being willing to continue otherwise? To me,
well,
that
I wouldn't
sounds
grant
like
that. I think that we can know things.
Well, I think we can know things. I just don't think that we can prove everything. And I
think
that
but look, if your view is just that, and I'm not looking for proof of everything. Like there are lots of things that we can't prove, but we can still know them. Like for example, I can't prove that my wife loves me, but I definitely know that my wife loves me. So I don't need proof. It's enough that I have plenty of evidence, right? It just sounds like you're saying that it is impossible for you to even give compelling evidence that God exists.
Yes, but I think that there are better arguments to convince somebody to take a leap of faith rather than to try to give an argument for the existence of God. I think it's better to give arguments towards pushing someone to have a leap of faith that there would be a God, and then to operate with that.
Why is there faith required if there are arguments that lead you to believe it's true?
No, that's what I'm saying. There are no. I'm trying to say that there are no logical arguments that can like fully, maybe prove is the wrong word, but there are no convincing logical arguments because there's always logic that can be used to go against those arguments as well. That's why I'm saying I think it's a better argument to like I think that Pascal for me in my conversion.
Sorry, you cut out for a second. You think that what?
I'm sorry, my internet's not great. I said I think that Pascal's wager was a better argument for me that led me to conversion of faith than it was the cause of causality.
Pascal's wager is like horrible.
Well, why do you think
It's
that?
fundamentally
Because I think it's
flawed.
pretty clear.
Because it assumes that the only two options are atheism or Christianity.
No, I don't. Well, okay, but you could use that Pascal's wager with, like, you could flip it and just,
If
you know,
there's
use it with
more than one
Islam.
option, suppose that, so if you allow for any possible God to be the option, and you have to compare all possible gods to atheism, then Pascal's wager fails immediately.
No, I think it just leads you to be interested and dive into all the different religions.
So suppose, is it possible that there exists a God who only sends atheists to heaven?
Is there any precedent for that, or is that something
That was my question. I'm
up?
asking, is it possible?
I would find it might be possible because I don't know everything, but I would say that that's extremely unlikely.
Okay, maybe it's extremely unlikely, but it's still possible. Maybe not plausible,
Sure,
but it's possible.
I think it has absolutely no precedent, but I mean, that's fine if you want to make that argument.
I mean, neither did Christianity before Jesus, right? But that doesn't, in your view,
True,
that doesn't
but that
make
would be our
Christianity true
precedent.
or false. So anyway, if this is possible, then you have to run the numbers on this possibility. So if you do believe in a God, then you go straight to the worst possible imaginable hell. If you believe in any kind of God, you go to the worst possible imaginable hell. And if you don't believe in God, you go to the greatest possible heaven imaginable. That's what this possible God, we'll call it atheismo, does.
Sure. But
So
that's
Pascal's wager
creating-
would then seem to indicate that you should not believe in any God.
Yeah, it would seem to indicate that if you start with the presumption that if you're an atheist, you go to heaven. But that's
that's
a
a
presumption
possibility.
that I would yeah, that is a possibility, but I also think this is what I mean when I talk about how logical arguments can't bring you to God, because
But
you're
I was
you're
describing
creating
why
an
Pascal's wager is
environment.
nonsense.
Yeah, but I don't know what you're trying to do. What it feels to me like you're doing is you're creating a presupposition that is just absolutely, I'm not meaning to be rude, but in my opinion, it's asinine, because there's no precedent for that throughout all of human history. So why would you start with a presupposition that's asinine, then lead it to its logical end in order to disprove something that actually has a precedent?
Because Pascal's wager doesn't rely on whether or not Pascal's wager doesn't rely on the probability of a theistic claim being true. All Pascal's wager is about is it's about analyzing the expected value for a certain belief. So regardless of how unlikely, the way that Pascal's wager functions is that regardless of how unlikely I think Christianity is, if believing in Christianity gives me more expected value than not believing in Christianity, if it gives me like unlimited expected value compared to not believing in Christianity, then it is always better to believe in Christianity, even if I think Christianity is extremely unlikely. So all you have to do, it doesn't matter how unlikely you think atheismo is, as long as the expected value that you get from not believing in any God is higher than the expected value that you would get from Christianity, then it's better that you don't believe in God.
Okay, again, I see the argument you're making. I understand what you're saying. But I go back to atheismo does not have any historical context. Atheismo did not exist. Atheismo did not.
It's irrelevant for Pascal's wager, though, right?
But it is relevant because Pascal's wager is a logical argument being presented within the context of the real historical truth.
No, it's not. Pascal's wager is merely about analyzing the expected value.
Okay, but it's about analyzing the expected value of belief or non-belief in things that did or did not happen historically.
No, it doesn't involve
like not
that
something
at all.
that just got made up today. Yeah, it does.
Pascal's wager is merely about analyzing expected value.
You were just saying it's only about Christianity, right?
Yeah, so that was the mistake that Pascal made, that he assumed that the only two options were Christianity and atheism. But that's the mistake. That's why the argument fails.
I just don't see it that way. I'm sorry. I don't see how you can come up with something that like you literally just made up atheismo and then present an argument based off of that.
I would say the exact same thing about Christianity, by the way. Literally just made up God.
But it's a little bit different. Wouldn't you say it's intellectually dishonest to just say that people made up Christianity, as in like it came from nowhere? It was just
atheismo didn't come from nowhere either. It came from a series of philosophical discussions. It didn't. The
I
idea
guess so.
didn't just pop out of
But
nowhere.
okay, yeah, that's fair. But also like okay, I wouldn't say it's intellectually dishonest for somebody to be Islamic because Muhammad definitely existed. He was a real historical person. I don't think they're right, but I don't think that they just made that stuff up out of
Okay,
nowhere.
then let's
think it
examine that
evolved over
option.
time.
Let's examine that through Pascal's wager. So now there's 3 options. Let's just assume that there's only 3 options: Islam, Christianity, or atheism. Now, if you're an atheist, you go to hell. If you are if you're an atheist and either Christianity or Islam is true, you go to hell. If you are a Christian and Islam is true, you go to hell. If you are a Muslim and Christianity is true, you go to hell.
Right.
And so in either case, it seems so. Doing that analysis, you come to the conclusion that in fact, Pascal's wager doesn't tell you what to believe. It doesn't tell you that you should believe in that Jesus rose from the dead.
Did. You were the one contending that it was.
You made the claim that Pascal's wager was convincing to you, but Pascal's wager fails even if you just include Islam.
Hang on. You said I said Pascal's wager was convincing to me. I never said it convinced me to follow Christ.
What was it convincing to you of?
It convinced me to believe in a God, to have a faith, and then
in how many gods?
Through study. It convinced me to have one. So in my
what if you believe
faith,
in what if Hinduism is true? If Hinduism is true and you're a Christian,
yeah.
then you're
So
going
I looked into that.
Hindu hell is really bad, by the way. Like it's like unimaginably bad.
Okay, this is what I'm saying. Pascal's wager convinced me to have a faith, to look into the idea of believing in God, to believe that there is something because of the consequences being so dire. So in my search for faith, I came to the
consequences aren't dire for every God.
Okay, fine. But in my search for faith, I was doing Zen Buddhism meditation for like 6 or 8 months when I was in my senior year of high school. I went through a bunch of different things, and what I came to was listening to more educated people talk about the historical evidence for Christ, and then for the evidence for the resurrection. I came to the idea that Christ was the answer because, in my opinion, and which is I'm not a scholar, I don't have a degree, but in my opinion, through my search, I found that most religions point to Christ. Like a lot of the Buddhists would say that he was a spiritual leader in some sense. I don't know if they called him a Buddha, but they say he's a spiritual leader. Islam considers him to be a prophet. Christianity obviously believes that he was the Messiah. Now, Jews specifically deny him as the Messiah. So all these different religions are pointing to Christ. And so that told me that there might be some significance.
So the vast majority of religions don't think that Jesus is the Son of God.
Yeah, I understand that. There's only one that does, obviously.
Right. So they all disagree with Jesus. I mean, like, look, the thing is that these religions will often refer to Jesus if they came afterwards, because Jesus is clearly an influential figure. The question is not whether Jesus was influential. The question is whether or not Jesus was the Son of God, right?
Right, but don't you think there's some amount of significance to the fact that he was incredibly influential across cultures, across religions?
No, not particularly. The reason he was influential is because of the Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire should be the reason that he was not influential. Nothing about Christ's character points to him being some demagogue. Like everything about him was extremely humble. So there's no reason for other than the reason that Christ was influential is because everything about the Jewish faith pointed towards something. And that something ended up being someone. Yeah, it did.
I mean, if you ask Jews, they'll disagree with you. That's not.
Sure.
It's just not true.
Modern day Judaism, but you have to understand.
Judaism?
Modern day Judaism. Excuse me, I misspoke.
Modern
day Judaism would.
I mean, also ancient Judaism. If you look at the Talmud, there is significant disagreement.
The first Christians were Jews who saw and could see through that the prophecies were pointing to Christ as a Messiah. See, the modern day Judaism believes that a Messiah will come.
We don't really have evidence that that's what they
warlord.
Believed. We have evidence that that's what perhaps the second or third generation of Christians believed.
Well, we have evidence by the what am I trying to say?
By the turn of the century.
Labor.
By the turn of the century, we have like Christians believing this. We don't really know what was going on in the very like the very first generation of the people who followed Jesus.
Mean, we have Christian symbols dating back to when the Jews were hiding, or not the Jews, excuse me, when Christians who previously were Jews were hiding in the catacombs of Rome. We have the fish symbol, right? The Christian fish, right? Refers to,
I actually don't know what the history of that is.
Well, it's a Christian symbol, and it was discovered in the catacombs of Rome.
It's called the ichthys.
Yeah.
So the first appearances of the ichthys in Christian art and literature dates to the 2nd century. So no, we don't have any evidence of this appearing amongst the first followers of Jesus.
Okay. Well,
this would be like 100 years after. But look, the point that I'm getting at is merely that there are of course, religious traditions that view Jesus as significant because he was significant insofar as the Roman Church, or sorry, the Roman Empire converted to Christianity a few centuries later. And the Roman Empire also conquered basically all of the known world. So these ideas were influential because the Roman Empire made them influential.
Right, but is it not significant to you at all that one man entered a historical scene, convinced a vast number of people to follow his religion, and then the largest empire on earth adopted that religion? How is that not significant?
Well, he didn't convince a large number of people to follow him.
At least somewhat true.
He didn't convince a large number of people to follow him.
Of course
That's the issue. Not while he was alive. No, he didn't.
Well, okay, okay. His being, his death, his resurrection.
The people who worshipped him convinced people to believe, convinced mostly non-Jews to believe in him, to believe in this religion. It wasn't Jesus that did this. And
okay,
this is how cults spread.
So you're arguing that people would believe his followers and not him.
No, it's just historically the case that not very many people were. He didn't have that many followers. He had some. He had,
Well, yeah, you're right.
We could probably say that he had like
it's hard to have
a few
an
dozen,
Instagram
maybe 100.
following in 0 AD. Like, yeah,
there is
no
0
exactly
AD.
Easy. Okay, man. Come on. Let's not. I'm just saying at the beginning of the Christian calendar, like in Jesus's time, it's not really easy to reach a vast number of people. They literally could only talk to as many people as could gather around in a circle and hear them. So of course he didn't convince a large number of people when he was alive. The story of his existence, the story of his death, his crucifixion, his resurrection was propagated throughout a large population.
Right.
And then that story became belief.
It's the story.
Yeah?
It's not him.
That's him? He is the story. What are we even talking about?
Look, okay, do you understand that the story about someone can be different from the person themselves?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the claim I'm making. Obviously, the story was influential.
So you're just arguing that everyone's wrong, like the story wasn't how it panned out.
Stories can be exaggerated.
Okay. So are you arguing that most of history as we know it is exaggerated then? Because I mean, there are less historical documents that prove that Alexander the Great existed than there are that Christ existed.
I don't think that's true.
You can Google that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, if we go look at, there is one, so most primary sources written by people who actually knew Alexander or who gathered information from men who served with Alexander are lost, but a few inscriptions and fragments survive. So we actually do have some inscriptions and fragments about Alexander the Great. Hold on, please, I'm in the middle of a sentence. A few inscriptions and fragments survive from people who knew him personally. These are contemporary sources that were written at the same time that Alexander the Great was alive. We have a few. We don't have like full written documents, but we do have a few that are like fragments and inscriptions about Alexander the Great that were written down at the same time as Alexander the Great being alive. We don't have any of that for Jesus. We have no contemporary sources for Jesus whatsoever.
No. We have no hard proof that the Gospels written by the disciples did come from that time because we don't have original source documentation. That's not the same as we don't.
We do have original source documentation for Alexander the Great.
Okay, but we don't necessarily. Okay, we have evidence. I forget. I don't know who wrote it down, but I know that there was a I think a scholar in ancient times that wrote about a man named Christ or Christ Jesus being crucified under Pontius Pilate. And this was completely outside of a religious context. This
You're
was
referring
just in a
to
historical context.
Josephus. Josephus wrote in his Antiquities of the Jews, he wrote like 60 years after Jesus died, that there was this Jesus figure. So this is not contemporary with Jesus.
And in antiquity, that's not a very long time in antiquity.
So to be clear, you made the claim that we have more sources for Jesus existing than we do for Alexander the Great. It's not true. We have contemporary sources that survived from Alexander the Great's time. Primary sources written by people who actually knew Alexander. We have nothing like that for Jesus.
Okay. All right.
This is just one of those things that people say that they never actually look into.
All right, I could be wrong about that. I'm sorry if I brought that up.
It's fine. I mean, you're allowed. It's okay to like not know something. I'm just saying, like, this is, you know, something that's worth checking out, because like there is so much historiography that we have for Alexander the Great, like overwhelming amounts, including primary sources.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that you're right about that. My fault, but I think we're getting what I was initially just trying to not partake. What I was initially trying to give to you was my experience of coming to Christ through a logical, what I think is a logical way. I went through Pascal's wager and decided that it must be possible that a God exists. It must be at least possible that a God exists. Then I explored different religions. I saw that
that's not what Pascal's wager is about. Pascal's wager is not about what's likely.
I'm just trying to give you my experience. I'm not trying to like buff up Pascal's wager. I'm just trying to give you my experience, because I don't think it's really, it might be possible, but I think it's incredibly unlikely for somebody to get on the stream with you and convince you, like on stream, that Christ is the answer. But I think that people will likely plant seeds, and that maybe potentially in time you might come to a faith. Maybe it's not Christianity.
I would hope
maybe it's
so.
something else. But yeah,
if it's true, I would hope so.
Yeah, and that's fine. And maybe you can do research into these arguments and see them presented in a better way than I can give you. But I was just saying that I came to it through Pascal's wager, the causality argument. Then I looked into different religions. I saw that they pointed to Christ. I studied history. I looked at the history of Christ, and I came to believe that it was reasonable, possible, etc. And so
have you looked into the arguments against those arguments?
Yeah, I've looked into some of them. I mean, I saw a I would encourage you to watch a film called what was it called? It was like a lawyer.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
What is it? What do you think I'm going to say?
There's oh God, I can't think of the name either. I would have recognized it if you said it.
Is it Case for Christ?
Yeah, it's that one. Don't say that one.
Well, why not?
Because it's terrible.
Okay. Whoops. I don't know, man. It seems like all the evidence that is presented to you is terrible. I mean, honestly, it seems like you have.
Well, that's because apologetics tend to make bad arguments. Like Pascal's wager. If you examine what Pascal wrote, Pascal never made the claim that it was even possible to logically conclude that God exists. Pascal's wager is about what it's logical to believe, based off of.
Okay.
So Pascal's wager is not Pascal's wager. It like the structure of the argument for Pascal's that is Pascal's wager is it is impossible to get you to believe that it is possible that God exists. That's not what Pascal's wager is about.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, like, how did you use Pascal's wager to come to the conclusion that it's possible that God exists?
Okay, because if Pascal is arguing for this, I would phrase it as Pascal's arguing for like the strength of belief, right? Or like to get somebody to believe, right? To believe is to have faith. Like there is
Pascal's wager assumes that it's possible that God exists.
Logic.
Pascal's wager begins by assuming that Christianity is true.
It assumes that it is possible that God exists.
Yeah, or more specifically, that Christianity is true.
Okay.
Pascal's wager assumes that Christianity is possible to begin with, and then it goes, is it reasonable to believe in it?
We're saying the word possible. We're not saying it is. We're saying it's
No, I
possible.
know,
Like
but
I would still contend
you
that it's
made the claim
possible
that
that
Pascal's
Islam is
wager
correct.
convinced you that it's possible. But Pascal's wager assumes it's possible.
Well, okay, fine. But I don't see what you're arguing.
What I'm getting at is
Maybe I'm
that it
just
sounds
not-
like the way that you came to belief is completely unreasonable.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I don't think that I'm an unreasonable person. I mean, I might not have all the facts. I might not have all the correct arguments, but I don't think I'm unreasonable.
So how do you conclude that it's possible that Christianity is true? How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, through study, through I mean, obviously a personal conviction is part of it.
I thought you said Pascal's wager got you there.
Well, Pascal's wager was a tool that I used in the early stages of my search for divine truth, but I'm not saying like I rest my entire faith on Pascal's wager.
So Pascal's wager wasn't the thing that got you to believe that it's possible that Christianity is true?
Pascal's wager was a tool that helped me to open my mind to the possibility that Christianity, no, excuse me, you're getting me a little confused here. Pascal's wager was a tool I used to open my mind to the possibility that God exists because of the dire consequences of not believing that a God exists.
So it opened your mind to the possibility that God exists?
Yeah, it basically, I would say well, I mean, it kind of scared me, if I'm honest, right? Like if I'm sitting in, I was just a teenager sitting in my room playing video games, fucking doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so sort of wasting my life away, right? And so I heard this argument that said, hey, if there's only really 4 possibilities, if it is true that Christianity exists, then there's only 4 possibilities. So if that's true, maybe try believing in it, and otherwise there's going to be some pretty dire consequences. And I said,
if it's
that might be true. So maybe
that,
just
that's
possibly,
only the
if
case.
I don't know everything.
That's only the case if it's possible that Christianity is true.
Yes, but why would you even contend that it's not possible that Christianity
well, look,
is true?
I'm not saying that you have to believe that it's like impossible or whatever, or that's where you have to start. But I keep asking you this question and explaining why this is like Pascal's wager doesn't help you, and then you just keep asserting that Pascal's wager is how you got there. Like surely Christianity has to be possible in order for Pascal's wager to make any sense, right? If it's not possible, then there's no concern over what if it's true, because it's not possible, right? So you have to assume that it's possible. And then I ask you how Pascal's wager is involved here, and you say, oh, well, Pascal's wager helped me believe that it's possible.
Okay,
so
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. But what you're also contending that, like, if it's not possible, then there's no reason to even think about Pascal's wager, right?
Yeah.
If Christianity is not, okay, that's great. But how can you know? Like, I think that's arrogant. I think it's just arrogant to contend that a major world religion that billions of people follow is just absolutely, there's no possible way that can be true without at least studying it and trying. I think that's an arrogant position
to say that I'm not familiar with Christianity is a little bit of a stretch. And
no,
look,
I'm
not
sorry,
even here
I didn't
making
mean to
the
contend
claim
that you weren't familiar with it. I was talking about myself as a teenager, right? Like, I'm sitting there in my room thinking, I don't know anything about this, right? So how can I just sit here and contend that it's not possible?
Look,
I should at least look into it.
I'm not saying that it's unreasonable to just be like, yeah, like if I don't know anything, like it's at least like possible that I could be wrong, and maybe Christianity is right. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that, and maybe this was just like a miscommunication or something, but it sounded like you said that what got you to believe that Christianity was possible was Pascal's wager. But it seems like you already believed that Christianity was possible. You were just looking for a reason to think that it's true.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Pascal's wager gets you to a reason to believe something is true once you agree that it's possible. That's kind of the point of Pascal's wager.
Yeah, but I agreed that a lot of things were possible because I felt like it was arrogant to contend that almost anything was impossible because I had no idea. I was, what could a teenager possibly contend is impossible other than like the blatantly obvious You know,
So,
like you know,
okay,
humans
so
can't flap their arms and fly, kind of shit.
So let's say that you're a teenager, you don't know much, so you think that Christianity is possible, but so is Islam, so is Shintoism, so is Buddhism, so is Hinduism, so is Judaism, so is Zoroaster. All these things are possible. And then you go do Pascal's wager and you're like, okay, well, if any one of these are true, then like, and I don't believe, then I'm screwed. So let's believe at least, let's think that at least one of them is true. Fine. And then you go to the causality argument, and that doesn't rule out anything, because all of these kind of major belief systems, they're all going to have some sort of explanation for where the universe came from, right? So then how do you go from, you know, there is some explanation for the universe to that explanation is Jesus, and Jesus resurrected after he was killed, and so on and so forth. How do you go from there is some explanation for the universe to Christianity?
Okay, well, through a couple different ways in no particular order. One, I mean, I would say the fruits of people's labors sort of pointed me to what would be more morally correct. I saw Christians acting in a way that I would instinctively find to be more morally correct.
Really?
Than, yeah, I would.
I mean, you were in high school, so you would have taken like
not,
history class, right?
Yeah, I took history. If you're going to talk about the Crusades, or can I move on to the other things?
I was going to talk about. I was just going to bring up the Inquisition, and then like the way that the Inquisition obviously bad.
I'm not saying that everything. First off, I'm anti-authoritarian. Okay,
that's good. I'm glad.
I think that most things that the authority does in the name of Christ are probably wrong. Okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about individual Christians that I would meet in person. I think.
I mean, like individual peoples of all faiths tend to be good.
Yes, but I could feel that there was something wrong about, like, okay, maybe the current modern evolution of the Latter-day Saints doesn't do this anymore, but Mormons having more than one wife, I thought that was just despicable. It didn't make any sense to me.
Well, but what about Christians owning slaves? I think that's despicable.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think the Bible argues that you should own slaves.
Well, it says that you can own slaves.
It was, yes, speaking to a certain people at a certain time.
So can Jews own slaves?
According to their religion, they can. I think so. I'm not.
Well, according to Christianity too, right?
No, I don't. No, not according to Christianity. The arguments against slavery were definitely from a Christian perspective.
The arguments for Christianity were also from a Christian perspective.
Well, sure, but that doesn't mean that they're right. Just because the two things exist doesn't mean that.
Right.
Like,
so it doesn't seem like Christianity was the deciding factor here. Look, so it seems like any time that you interact with like a normal person on a normal day, they're going to be a decent person. Like like most people are decent. I think that this is probably true. And it just so happens that most of the people that you're going to interact with, if you sound like you're American or at least Canadian, most people you interact with are going to be Christian, because that's the world that we live in the West. But you know, I went to Nepal for my brother's wedding like a year and a half ago.
I also, to be fair, I also live in Houston, which is an incredibly diverse city.
Yeah, diverse. It's diverse as far as perhaps ethnicity, but I don't think it's diverse in terms of religion.
I mean, where do you live?
I live in Phoenix, which is also pretty homogenous.
I live in Houston, I can tell you, there's a lot of different religions here. Like, there's
Muslim so I just pulled up the data.
Mosques and stuff like that.
72% of people in Houston are Christian. 21% are unaffiliated. 2% are Muslim, 1% are Jewish, 1% is Buddhist, 0.5% is Hindu, and 1.5% are other faiths. So the people who hold other religions make up less than 5% of Houston.
Well, sure, but also Houston's a massive area. I mean, most of those statistics probably come from the
95% of people are either going to be 95% of the people that you meet are either going to be in Houston or either going to be atheist or Christian.
Okay, well, that's fine statistically, but my personal experience is I've met a lot of Muslims, a lot of Jews, a lot of Hindus.
And are you saying that Muslims and Jews were like worse people than the Christians that you've met?
No, I don't think that they're less decent people. I think that their morality is less appealing to me on a fundamental level. I don't think that their morality is correct. That doesn't mean that they're indecent people, or they're not sincere, or they're not worthy of
How do you
respect.
evaluate the quality of their morality except through their actions?
Excuse me, sorry, say that again.
How are you evaluating the quality of the individual's morality?
That's a good question. Well, okay, so let me say this.
I mean, somehow you're doing it, right?
Well, sure. Let me tell you how I came to not really not accept the Mormon theology and morality. Okay, my ex-wife was a Mormon, and then she converted to Catholicism. So all of
Okay.
her family was Mormon, and we would go over to their house, and I would ask them all kinds of questions about their theology, about the different like levels of heaven and stuff that they had, and how the church went from being called Mormons to being called Latter.
Oh, where'd you
I
go?
found them to be very. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
no, you're good. I can hear you.
Okay. So, and anyway, through their explaining their theology to me, I found it to be interesting. I found them to be speaking sincerely. I didn't find them to be bad people, but I just fundamentally disagreed with their theology because it just
I
didn't.
thought we were talking
it
about
didn't
morality.
speak. Yeah, well, their theology is sort of intrinsically tied into morality, right?
The theology is more like the story about like it's like an understanding of how God works and what God is and the relationship between God and man and these kinds of things. Morality is, I mean, if you're a religious person, morality often comes from God, but you know, just because
Right.
You mentioned morality, and now it sounds like you're going to say that, well, their heaven doesn't make sense, or you know, the way that they proselytize doesn't make sense to me. Like,
okay, I was just trying to tell you, like, I was trying to wrap my brain around how I assess somebody's morality, and I was getting into I was trying to get somewhere with that, sort of trying to tell you the story to myself think a little bit about how I would assess somebody's morality. I was just saying that maybe I was rambling a little bit, but what I'm getting at is that they were telling me about the Mormon practices, the Mormon, I guess you could call it doctrine, right? About you know, their doctrine would say, you know, you can't have caffeine, no sex before marriage, other things like that that directly pertain to the moral actions of a person, right?
Sure.
Now, some of their morality was absolutely convincing to me and made perfect sense and just instinctively, and then some of it didn't. And what I came to eventually was actually more recently in the past 2 years or so. I'd been a Christian for a while, but I eventually came to the what's the word? Denomination of Reformed Presbyterianism. So that's where I landed eventually. But I'm saying that like how I evaluate the morality of another person, I guess to me it feels instinctive, and as a religious person, I would define that instinctive feeling towards knowing what is true and what isn't as like divine inspiration or divine direction.
So there's not really like I don't want to say objective, but there's not really like a rigorous or standard way that you can use to evaluate the morality and figure out which one's correct.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't even think that that's something we can do. Like I was trying to, like, this is another thing that I don't think we can really do logically. Like I think that it really does come from God.
But
Because
look, so
of course I evaluate morality in a way that
you
aligns with my belief, and my belief would say that morality comes from God. So how could I say that I'm evaluating somebody else's morality on the basis of my own understanding when of course I'm not. I'm evaluating it on the morality that is
Hobo,
given to me by God.
did you grow up in Houston?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
mostly.
Look, there's two directions that we can go here. One, it sounded like earlier you were talking about the fruits of the morality of the people. And now we're just talking about like your like kind of instinctive feelings about how you're evaluating somebody's moral code.
But how else would I evaluate the fruits of their morality?
You could you could examine like the consequences of their actions based off of that they take based off of the implied morality of their religious tradition or whatever. But what it sounds like is more likely to be the case. This sounds more likely is that as far as religious affiliation goes, Protestantism is the most common one in Houston. And so it just seems like that you're going to be raised in an environment where that is the norm, and so your instincts are going to align with it. It doesn't seem like this has anything to do with whether it's true or not.
I mean, I'm not against that as a logical argument. I just don't think that that's true. I think
it is true that Protestantism is the norm. It's also true that children are very easily influenced by their surroundings.
I don't think that's true. You're just okay. I'm saying that I don't think that is the fundamental underlying truth for why I am a Christian. I think that those are influences that existed in my life, but I don't think that those are fundamental fundamental. That's the whole unfettered truth. That makes
So
sense.
what I'm
Like
it seems like that, like, why do you think that why do you think that people in Saudi Arabia are overwhelmingly Muslim?
Is that like a trick question? Like,
Not a trick
of course,
question.
like their surroundings. Like I'm not. I'm not debating. I'm not trying to say that that's not a good argument. I just am saying that I don't think that's true for me.
But here's the thing. They would say the exact same thing as you're saying. They would say, well, you know, my moral instincts that were given to me by God let me evaluate the quality of the morality and the fruits of the people around me, and it just seemed like, you know, this the ethics that I was given, that God put on my heart, were more closely aligned with the ethics of Islam.
Well,
they would say the
I
exact
don't
same
think
thing that you're saying, but it would get them to the opposite conclusion.
Okay,
So
well,
it can't be that that line of reasoning is correct if you're able to use that same line of reasoning to come to the opposite conclusion.
Okay, that's a solid point. I don't really have a contention against that. I can only speak from my personal experience, and my personal experience isn't that like I was raised in the church and that I even had a large amount of people that I interacted with. Sure, like people on the street or at the store were probably Christian. I never really spoke to people in public about my faith. I did a lot of my own seeking through just my own research through the internet and choosing different churches to go to. I went to Catholic Mass many times. I went to the synagogue once or twice with. I've been around. I'm not saying that like I just don't think that the environmental argument applies in a deep, meaningful way to me. And I understand if you think that that's not a good argument, but that's still what my contention is. I think that's my personal experience.
Okay. I mean, like, well, I'm not here to tell you that your personal experience is wrong. Well, maybe I am, but this is to say we're probably at an impasse here, so I'm going to let you go.
Yeah,
but thank you for being here, Hobo.
Fine. No, yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Take care. He was nice, if wrong. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. Let us read some super chats, and then we'll bring on our next guest. From Ekipo with the €5, believing two contradictory ideas at once is doublethink, and it's from 1984. Yeah, that's true. From Mindforged Manacle with the $5, that claim about Alexander the Great is an old apologetics canard. It's not true. It's just disagreeing with me entails ditching all of history. Yeah, it's just false. It's strictly false. From Grimmy with the $5, I wish religious individuals would understand what historical fiction is and how the Bible fits in this category. Well, I mean, it's not necessarily just historical fiction in the modern sense, but it's a kind of historical fiction, yes. That reminds me, I need to go look at my super chats. Sorry, my cash apps. From Mindforged Manacle with the $10, don't forget the Iraq War. Bush had then said to French President Chirac, that when he looked at the Middle East, he saw Gog and Magog at work and the biblical prophecies unfolding. Yeah, it's cringe, right? Bush was cringe. From Riddell Castro with the $2, hope you're having a good one. I am. Thank you so much. It's appreciated. And from Grimmy with the $5, Gousset, or Guest, is anti-authoritarian but believes in a god and religion that is based on authority. Seems contradictory. I just let that one slide. And from Lost in FRP with the 110 Turkish lira, love your streams, thanks. Your stream is the background music while I'm designing a historic mission to the moon in KSP RP1. Thanks to you, I started playing KSP again after a long time. Well, have fun with that and good luck. RP1 is challenging, but not impossible. All right, I just want to make sure that I don't miss the cash apps that I got. So I got a cash app from Robert with the $2 for thanks for the great work. Hope you're feeling better. I'm feeling a lot better. From Grimlock with the $10 for your continuous hydration reminder. And from Shay for calculating with the calculator, right? It's very, very much appreciated. Thank you so much, Shay, for the $50. It's very generous as always. Shay is a regular contributor, as is Grimlock, as is Robert for that matter. All right, let us bring up our next guest. By the way, somebody in the comments, and I don't know when this was, kept accusing me of being a dialetheist. I'm not a dialetheist, and I've never claimed to be. So it was a weird accusation to make. All right, let us bring up I don't know if this person actually is serious, but let's talk to Uncle Grandpa because they've kind of been begging to come up for a while. Uncle Grandpa, do you got something worthwhile to say?
Yes, I do. Dr. Blitz, I just want to start by saying I'm glad that you are healthy and that everything it came through with that. I watch you all the time. I think
I appreciate that. Very cute.
Yeah, no, I'm so everybody in the comments saying I'm not a scientist. I was a neurobiology, physiology, and behavior major from UC Davis. I'm not gonna say where my master's and PhD
Based
are
UC
from. I'll say the
Davis.
fields though. Yes,
That's right. That's where I went to grad
I
school.
love UC Davis. But I started at community college. I started off at Los Medanos Community
Sure.
College in Pittsburgh, California. So, but I had a hard time in high school.
Oh damn!
I have an
Sorry, I
eidetic
have to turn
memory.
your volume down.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
my
Yeah,
fault.
no
Okay,
problem.
volume should be fine now. You're good.
Okay. I debate. I just started doing debates, so I've only been
Okay.
doing this for like 3 days. I debated Dean already and Parker about Trump, which they had to kick me from the live because they said I was a troll. Then they couldn't approach my argument
you
because I wrote
trolling?
a both valid. No, I wrote a valid
Okay.
and sound argument that Trump should win in 2028, and they weren't ready for it. I've been making this debate for days, weeks. I spent lots of time on it. They just weren't prepared.
Okay. Well, let's hear the
You're
valid
prepared
and
though,
sound
because
argument
you
here.
know more about quantum physics than I do. So
Sure.
so
Let's hear
you'll
the valid and sound
probably be
argument.
able to find the holes.
Also, by the way,
Yes,
that's a
I have a
crazy
valid and
claim.
sound
that-
argument about a quantum god.
It is, by the way, it is absolutely a crazy claim that Trump should be elected in 2028, but we can skip right over that.
No, I'm going to come back to one of your
quantum
political
god.
lives, and I want you to pick me apart on that because I like the way that
Okay.
you
So quantum god. Just before we begin, can we talk about what it is the god that you believe in?
Yeah, so I've seen you debate people before on like their like personal idea of like what God is, right? I don't have like a Christian or Muslim or like Catholic. That's
Sure.
not my thing.
But you do believe
I'm
in
coming
some
from,
like what is this god that you believe in? Is it something with a mind?
It's someone that it's not, I don't want to say someone. It is a thing that has, it's where all probability comes from the quantum realm. That's my God. It's like if we're looking
Does
at
it-
dualism, like
does
there's
it have a
matter
mind,
and then
though?
there's the mind. I'm saying that all of what we consider to be the mind comes from quantum mechanics and quantum biology.
Look, so
And
just
that
the way that
is
people
God.
traditionally understand what God is
Right.
minimally, it is some sort of being with a mind that is responsible for perhaps creating the universe or maybe grounding the universe or something like this. And it has some sort of will, it has some sort of volition. And so if the thing that you're referring to isn't that, then there just might not be any disagreement. But let's just we can just hear the syllogism and we can just
That's honestly what I was wondering. I don't think you would disagree with me. I honestly think it would be a semantics thing of you saying, if I say like this is a quantum god, you'd be like, well, that's not a god of what most people believe, so I'm not going to argue on it. I honestly think that's what.
All right, so let's hear it. Let's hear the syllogism. How many premises are there?
I don't have it set up like that yet. I just have
okay.
it kind of laid out as like, yeah.
Okay, well,
it would take a
Let's hear
lot
it.
of like rewriting. Okay,
Let's hear it.
so I'm coming from the standpoint of dualism. So I believe in matter, right? And then
Okay.
there is the stuff that is the mind, right? And the
Okay.
stuff that is the mind all comes from a place that is outside
P1,
of our universe.
Dualism is true. Sure.
Yes. And then, so I want to say that, quantum mechanics, we know that a lot of it works, right? Quantum mechanics works. I can't hear you
Okay.
anymore though.
Sorry. The P2 quantum mechanics is true. So far, so good.
Yeah. And that there are like areas of quantum mechanics that can exist outside of our universe. So all of quantum mechanics could be something that's outside of our universe and affects things that are inside the universe.
Quantum mechanics that are outside our universe and perhaps affect things inside our universe. Something like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
What's the
correct,
next step?
correct. And then I would have my evidence from that supports those.
Right. But we'll just grant each premise and then we just want to see how we get to the.
Oh, you're just
what
going
we
to
get
say those things.
Yeah, I just want to hear what the argument is before we, and then we can talk about the pieces that go into the argument afterwards.
Yeah, so my argument is that everything that we see in quantum biology that is continually being proven true, and quantum biology is one of the forefront fields of quantum mechanics, right? It's one of those subfields that human consciousness, right, is coming from quantum biology, and that there has to be something that exists outside our universe that is controlling living things and giving them the ability to have consciousness. I don't want to go panpsychism that like rocks are thinking, right? but things that have, I'm going to say, collections of neurons. There may be more things than that, but things that have collections of neurons have minds, and those minds have consciousness. And that if these quantum things can exist outside our universe at a large scale that we can't comprehend, then that thing would be able to think and have its own mind, and would be what we would consider to be a god because of the thing.
I'm slowly losing the ability to syllogize this for you in real time.
Right.
So first, I don't grant that dualism is true, but even if we did grant that dualism is true, P3 seems false, like just strictly false. I don't know on what grounds you would say that there are pieces of quantum mechanics that are outside our universe.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for that if you're ready for that.
P4 also seems false. Or at least definitely not, there hasn't been given, we haven't seen sufficient evidence that demostrates it's true.
I'm ready for that, though. I'm ready for that.
Okay, so let's hear, what's the explanation for why you think there are pieces of quantum mechanics that are outside our universe?
Pre-space geometries.
Why would that be outside our universe?
Physicists have shown that quantum geometries can exist outside of a space and time.
Are you taking our universe to just be space-time?
No, I'm saying like what we consider to be the universe, physicists, right, have shown that there are quantum geometries that can exist outside of space-time. Are you saying that the universe already has things
includes
outside
all that.
of space-time?
Yeah, it would include all that. The universe is all of the physical stuff.
Outside of space and time as well?
Just all of the physical stuff, whether it's in space-time or not, it's all the physical stuff.
Yeah, but I'm arguing that there's
all
a
the material
mind
stuff,
thing,
rather.
which is the quantum god outside of the space-time.
Right, but okay, but it could still be like a material thing?
No, it's not. The thing that is outside of the universe is not a material thing. It's the mind.
So you can have
thing.
material things that don't occupy space-time. Like
But I'm not
quantum
talking about
states
a
would still be
material
material things.
But it doesn't need to have the universe to. It doesn't have to be inside the universe. It wouldn't be a matter thing that's out there.
So the way that I talk, and maybe we're just disagreeing on semantics here, but like when I think of the universe, I'm really like, I use that as longhand or shorthand for like all of the physical and materials, or all of the physical and or material stuff that exists.
Okay, and then, but outside of that, I'm saying that there is a mind part, which is like quantum mechanics. So it wouldn't be a matter thing.
Quantum.
Well, yeah. So I would get there.
So if you're a dualist, then you would think that there is like this metaphysical realm of minds, and
yes,
that
but
has
I'm
nothing to do
arguing
with
that
the
the
physical
mind thing
stuff.
isn't just like this metaphysical realm; that it's an area of probability that exists outside of space-time. It's like a field of probability that is larger than our universe, but it's outside of the universe, but it affects the things that are inside the universe.
So if just by the universe you just mean like classical space-time, then sure, I would agree with P3.
Yes.
That's
okay.
I don't see an issue with that.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So then, you can have quantum states that are not classically describable. Sure.
Right. So is that enough for P3? I have three more things for
sure.
P3.
So long as that's what you mean by universe, or so long as that's what you mean by outside the universe, sure. Okay, so then P4. What's the claim? What's the claim for P4? That how we get that the mind is arising from quantum biology?
Yeah, quantum tunneling. That there are structures within neural clusters that are quantum tunneling and things that are vibrating, and that's what gives rise to consciousness.
Well, that's the leap. How do you know that that's what gives rise to consciousness?
Well, we don't know where consciousness comes from 100%, but the leading research shows that it could be electrons that are bouncing between different quantum states, and that's giving a rise to consciousness, or that there are vibrational structures within neural clusters that are giving rise to consciousness. There's not just one thing that's being thought of that is 100% true, but that is where all the research is pointing to.
Could you give me an example of this research? Because my understanding is that this is actually pretty fringe. Is that it is
fringe. That's why everything that I'm saying.
So then it's not. So then it's false that everything we see in quantum biology indicates that human consciousness comes from quantum biology. If it's fringe, then clearly it's not the majority of stuff that we see in quantum biology points this way.
Well, okay, so let me give you an example. So I'll jump into a little neuroscience just because you're asking for like sources and you're trying to say like I'm just making all this stuff.
I'm not
So do
trying
you
to say
know
you're
what the
making it all
global
up.
neuronal workspace theory is?
I'm not trying to say you're making all of it up. I'm just saying like it seems like if this is a fringe view, then it seems like we have good reason, or we at least have good reason to remain skeptical of it.
But there is empirical evidence for it.
Then why is it still a fringe view? If it's like obviously true,
I mean,
because it has the evidence.
Because if it's happening, how long does it take for a newly formed theory to become recognized by the larger scientific body on average?
I guess it depends on the thing. Like
I know,
Einstein's relativity was accepted in like 5 years.
Field.
Einstein's relativity was accepted in like 5 years.
Right. So how fast has neuroimaging been progressing, let's say in like last 10 years?
I don't know. I don't really pay attention to it.
Okay. So like it is advancing so big that like right now they are still doing studies, right, on different people, and they'll say like, you know, you eat this and then we're going to see which area of the brain lights up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so doing these studies over and over and over are kind of creating things that are, and I can explain those theories right now. One of them is the global neuronal workspace theory. I don't know if you know what that is.
Never heard of it. But actually, let's just back up just a minute, because I actually think that I could just say, okay, P4 is true. So then if I just grant that P4 is true, all that gets us to is that it is possible that the origin of consciousness comes from things requiring non-spatio-temporal descriptions. That's what we mean when we say that there are pieces of quantum mechanics outside of space-time, right?
Yes.
But that doesn't indicate that those parts of consciousness indeed do come from outside of space-time. Or that quantum mechanical stuff does come from outside of space-time. So how do you get to
that is 100% correct.
The origin of consciousness comes from outside the universe?
Well, so that's the part that I have to try to argue to you. That's the part I have to try to convince you of, that what I'm thinking is true. And then you may destroy that right now, and I would have to concede to you 100%.
Well, okay, so what's the argument? So suppose I grant that consciousness has its origins in quantum mechanics, maybe via tunneling or whatever. How do you then conclude that thing that is, you know, the underlying quantum mechanical effect is outside the universe?
Yeah, so that's basically the bridge I have to try to walk you across.
Right. So walk me across the bridge.
Okay. So first I'm going to go over the quantum theories that I think are most important for just understanding human consciousness. Like it's like the actual studies and things that are being studied right now. And I'll just go over them super briefly, and then you can say whether or not you think these things are true.
Sure.
So orchestrated objective reduction. So this is Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff.
Yep.
You know about them?
I do.
Do you know the study, or can you just say that you already know?
Yeah,
that
I'm familiar with
it. Is pretty much the microtube. Okay. Quantum biology and electromagnetic fields. So John Joe McFadden.
Not familiar with it.
Okay, so he's proposing that consciousness emerges from electromagnetic fields generated by neural networks, and that aligns with what I was talking about with quantum biology. It's already been proven quantum biology exists in things like photosynthesis, bird migration, stuff like that. Okay, so his main thing is that there's quantum processes that underlie major biological phenomena, including consciousness. And so that...
So just to be clear, I'm granting for the sake of argument that consciousness arises from some quantum mechanical process.
Correct.
So how do you then infer that this is a non-spatiotemporal quantum mechanical process?
Yeah, I just have one more thing, and then
sure. Go ahead.
To that. Yeah. So the last one is quantum information science. So this is a really new approach, and this one is saying that consciousness can be understood as. Oh, so are you okay with saying that human consciousness? There's a lot of evidence saying that it could be an information structure, such as like some type of quantum information. So it's going to be an abstract, cosmically based bit.
Well, I take the view that information is information is abstract. We agree on this. I imagine we agree on this.
Quantum information specifically.
Well, yeah. Quantum information is just a kind of information. And I take it to be that this is an abstract thing that doesn't like actually exist. It's just like a way of describing things.
See, and that's where I have the issue, is that if what we're talking about with quantum biology and human consciousness right now is leading us towards that, there's information in our brain which would be, we call our consciousness, and it has a quantum structure such that it has to be both. It has to be an abstract thing, and we know that there are cosmically based bits that.
What do you mean cosmically based bits?
Just like some type of like abstract information that's not information. It's like, well, when I say quantum information, what would you think of when I say quantum information?
I'm thinking of things that are studying like entanglement entropy between quantum systems. I'm thinking
exactly. So quantum tunneling could fit in with that, right?
Not
quantum
really.
tunneling
No.
could fit in with that.
Not really. No.
Why?
Quantum tunneling is a separate phenomenon. Quantum tunneling is intrinsically it's non-discrete, whereas qubits are. Qubits require discrete states, and quantum tunneling is not that.
So there's no place where that can occur. I don't know that.
I mean, not really. No. I mean, maybe somebody could come up
even
generate something that's like
even like with the physics.
No, it's just kind of like a category error. Quantum tunneling is like a thing that happens when you have some sort of quantum state, and there's like a potential barrier that prevents that state from occupying some other state.
But you're saying that there's no way that it could.
Quantum information is like a. Yeah, this is like a physical quantum tunneling is a physical process that happens, so it doesn't really apply to the abstract.
Could quantum tunneling result in quantum information that is abstract?
I mean, quantum tunneling could result in a quantum state that has quantum information, in the sense that like you could imagine that you have an electron bound in one state, and then that whatever the state that electron is in, it corresponds to, say, a 0 qubit or something like this, and then for whatever reason it quantum tunnels to another state, and now it has a 1 qubit. Now it's the 1 qubit state. You could imagine that, but I don't really know how you're saying that like quantum tunneling is like a kind of quantum information or something like that. I don't know what that means.
No, I was saying that like if quantum tunneling, right, is resulting in these vibrational frequencies that can create a type of quantum information, such as these. I don't understand these. Honestly, I've been spending a lot of time trying to research them and understand it. I don't know physics like that. That's just not one of my areas of study. I know theoretical mathematics. I know philosophy. I know neuroscience. I know education. Those are like my major like 4 things I know. So I don't know it. I don't think I know enough to say that is true or false. I don't know if you
even amongst physicists, the claim that quantum information is a thing that exists is very contentious.
Right. But would you say that is a cutting edge field of study right now in
quantum information is a field. Definitely a lot of people work on it, like especially in quantum computing. But if you're like talking to like fundamental like physicists who study like fundamental nature of reality, like these are like
right.
Like it is very contentious to say that quantum information is a thing that exists. I mean, obviously it's a field of study, but like the thing that field of study is studying, whether or not that exists or if it's a useful description, that's very contentious.
Okay. So I would have to build some kind of evidence that quantum tunneling could create this quantum information, and that I'd have to prove that it existed abstractly and could be in a collection of a being that we could call a god that's outside of the what I would say is the physical universe.
There's a few steps that you would need. You would need to first show that quantum tunneling is the thing that gives rise to consciousness. We
already know that's pretty much. There are studies that have shown that that's pretty much true. That
seems like maybe you're talking about a study that came out like last week or something, but I feel like that this would be something that would be like, if this is the case, then this arguably like solves the problem, the hard problem of consciousness. So like I'd be very, very, very skeptical of this.
So no, I'm not saying that this solves all of those types of problems that we have with
what we do know, and so what I am familiar with, and this is like the hammer off thing or whatever, right, is that like there are certain phenomena that take place in the brain when the brain is awake compared to when the brain is asleep. And when the brain is awake, there's like there's like some quantum coherence that happens in like these microtubules. That's the thing that I'm aware of. But this doesn't say But this doesn't say that there's a causal relationship between the microtubules being in a quantumly coherent state and the activity of consciousness, right? That is a correlation. The causal relation could go in the opposite direction. The causal relation could be from some third party that causes both. This is not evidence that there is a causal relation between the tunneling and the conscious, or at the coherence and the consciousness, right?
Okay. So first you have to establish. So let me go back to. Right. Can I go back to some of the biological evidence that I think exists that shows that eventually they will find that quantum tunneling is what gives rise to the vibrational frequencies that we need in order to have consciousness.
If you're going to say that they eventually will, then that means that they haven't.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying like, because if something just came out recently, like let's say they've only been talking about this for the past like 3 years, right? It's going to take time before everybody accepts it. But there's already things that are already accepted that are so close to what I am arguing.
By the way, the idea with Hameroff is like pretty old at this point.
It is, but they're moving on that. That's why I wanted to talk. There were 4 different things I kind of wanted to talk about, or 3 different things I really wanted to focus on that I know a lot about that have to do with quantum coherence, quantum tunneling, and magnetoreception. That there are things that are happening that are very similar to what happens with those things.
So I agree that it's plausible that there are like quantum phenomena involved in the brain, but to make your argument work, you need to prove there's basically like 3 or 4 steps. First, you need to show that without these quantum phenomena, consciousness can't happen. The second thing that you will need to do is you will need to show that these quantum phenomena are the kind of quantum phenomena that are separate from, or that necessarily exist non-spatio-temporally. And then, so I guess that's only 2 steps.
So
what
you're saying is like I have to like spend the next 10 years doing this and then win like a Nobel Prize, right? Because if I solve human consciousness, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what you have to do.
Nobel Prize, $1 million, and I can go around and give speeches for $250,000, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, look. So there's kind of I think the first step is probably where this will fail. I think that consciousness is probably mostly classical, but there's some shortcuts that you get from quantum mechanics.
There's no way it is. There's no way it is. No, I do not.
Well, I mean, like, look, the reason why I say that, and like I could be wrong about it, but the reason why I say that is that photosynthesis is mostly classical, but there's some steps that like you get shortcuts, you get energy efficiencies because of quantum coherence mechanics
and energy transfer, right?
Right. But like the process of photosynthesis is like a mostly classical thing. It's just there's like a few bits.
But that's why I'm a dualist though, because there are it's not 50-50.
But it's not the case that in order for photosynthesis to exist at all, you need quantum mechanics. Now, photosynthesis, the way that it evolved,
I would argue against that. I would argue that the amount of energy transfer between the pyramids would not be the same.
I will explain. Obviously, on Earth, if you take away quantum mechanics, if you snapped your fingers and disappeared quantum mechanics, photosynthesis would not function on Earth because that's the way it evolved. It evolved to take advantage of this particular quantum mechanical effect. But the concept of photosynthesis, taking energy from a star and converting it into some sort of like chemical nutrient, that's not a thing that like intrinsically requires quantum mechanics, like ontologically, right? Like we could imagine all sorts of chemical pathways that could make this happen that wouldn't require some sort of explicit tunneling effect or explicit, coherence effect, right? Like this is not in principle requires quantum mechanics kind of thing. That's what I mean. So it's at least possible, it at least seems possible that considering that the human brain is mostly classical, it's not entirely classical because there's electrons and stuff doing stuff, but or let's just grant that it's not entirely classical. Considering the brain is mostly classical, it's at least plausible, and it seems likely even, that consciousness doesn't require quantum mechanics, but rather there are some shortcuts that the way we evolved consciousness ends up relying on some quantum mechanical process or another. Does that make sense?
I can see all of that, but I just have one thing to kind of rebut that. Out of all things that are made up out of physical matter, how much of them have something that is an electron, or we want to say, if we talk about antimatter, talk about the positron? And are all of those things really heavily involved with what I'm talking about with quantum mechanics?
Most of the stuff involves electrons, yeah. But electrons in large collections can behave classically. And, the brain is a very large collection.
Correct. But why is it that of all of the things that we understand about the human body, the brain is the thing that we understand the least?
It's probably the most complicated thing.
Correct. When it comes to quantum mechanics, the more complicated a system gets, isn't it true that the information can get more complex and more abstract and is harder to,
they actually behave more classically. They behave more classically the bigger they get.
I'm not talking about size matter. I'm talking about the complexity of the structures, like the microtubule structures we have in our brain. Why is it our fingers aren't conscious? Because they do not have the collection of microtubules that our brain has. Hold on,
you're assuming that it's the microtubules that are required.
It is 100% those microtubules in the neurons that are required, 100% for consciousness.
I don't know. Look, again, I'm making the distinction. Like, it might be required in our brain. Like, I don't know. You probably know about this better than I do. It might be required that, if you remove the microtubules, or if you somehow turned off the quantum mechanics of the microtubules in our brain, maybe our consciousness would cease. But that doesn't mean that microtubules or quantum mechanics are in principle required for consciousness. That's the distinction that I'm drawing.
Can you give me an example where we have consciousness within a living organism where there are no microtubules?
Bro, I can't even definitively make the claim that you're conscious.
Okay, but now we're getting super philosophical.
Like, I mean,
and
could I? So, like, I don't know. Do our tardigrades conscious? I don't know. Do tardigrades have microtubules? I don't know. Like, are plants conscious? Maybe, probably not. Do they have microtubules? I don't think so. Like, figuring out what things are conscious and what things aren't is really, really hard. And it seems like making a definitive claim that it absolutely requires microtubules, otherwise you can't have conscious, full stop, that seems like an enormous claim.
That is an enormous claim. I'm talking about on the, let's just say I'll restrict myself to Earth and the life forms that we have studied here,
but that could
have
just be a consequence of the way that
at
neurons
least a neural
evolved.
bundle.
That could just be a consequence of the way the neurons evolved. Like, I could imagine.
That is true, but in order to prove your
way,
claim, you would have to show me a planet that exists under different rules and show me life that evolved under different rules in order to support you.
No, that's not how that works. If you're making a positive claim, namely that microtubules or quantum mechanics are required for consciousness, you need to show that it's impossible for consciousness to exist without quantum mechanics.
Okay, I'll do that.
The burden is not on me.
As quantum computers. Microtubules as quantum computers.
Okay, how does that indicate that microtubules are required, or quantum mechanics is required for consciousness?
Because in order to reach the most advanced computers we have are quantum computers, correct? Like, would you agree with that?
Advanced in what sense?
In the sense that they can process more, they can process more information than anything else that we have built.
No, that's false.
Technology. What's bigger than that?
Supercomputers. Like, I mean, like, the supercomputers that run CERN can process like petabytes of data in a second, right? Quantum computers can't do that.
Okay. So, I didn't know that.
Yet.
I'm not a physicist. I'm not a physicist. I don't know that.
No, it's fine. Current quantum computers are, they are better in some respects for solving a particular class or particular classes of problems, but they're not universally better.
Oh yeah. It's but we're talking about the using them for the things that we have classically used computational things for, right? Yes, supercomputers are better because the technology is not there yet 100% for quantum computers. But quantum computing that is shown to be the best so far is mimicking how microtubules function inside brains.
Microtubules are sorry, repeat that.
So from my understanding, like I said, computer science is not my field, but from what I've been reading, the way that they are advancing quantum computers and their technology and looking at using hybrids of both synthetic, machinery like circuit boards, transistors, let's say that, and actual organic material, like collections of microtubules, because ORC-OR shows that microtubules aren't just like some kind of structural thing.
It claims that microtubules, by the way,
they are capable of supporting quantum computations. There are people that are starting to study.
That's the claim.
That is the claim, that is the claim. But the fact that they are starting to show linkages between those, and yes, there's not enough experimental data. It's going to take a couple more years, but that's where they're at right now. The lattice structure of these things, right, are showing that quantum superposition and entanglement, right, key things about quantum mechanics, are linked to both quantum computers and to microtubules and how they create these frequencies in the brain where they think consciousness is coming from. So like there is a linkage between these things.
There's a very there's a very tenuous link currently. Like maybe in 10 years you'll be vindicated here, but at the moment I don't think we can make these claims.
No, I mean, but it supports that you're saying that like you don't know if it's sure that it only evolved here and that you have to have these microtubules to have it. But wouldn't you say that computers would be the same everywhere in the universe if the laws of physics are constant?
That computers would be the same? Probably not.
Can you give me examples of different types of computers that are not the same
computers
that people are using?
Analog computers.
Who's using analog computers right now?
I can go find you some. There are some specific analog computers that are, I mean, like, analog computers were used in the past, and then digital computers took over, and now we're realizing that analog computers are better for some tasks.
That is true, but for most modern tasks, right? What type of computer is the best computer for the average person?
For the average person, it's going to be a digital computer, but that doesn't mean that like I can imagine a world where like they never discovered digital computing, and they just have relied on analog computing the whole time. Like, and that seems plausible. Like, that doesn't seem like anything that like rules that out. Look, it seems like a lot of, there's a reason why OR is not really believed by anybody. And it's because the claims that are made seem to be far, far broader than the actual evidence we have for those claims. And maybe in 10 years, we will have much better evidence for those claims, much better robust linkages between the actual function of the superradiance in the microtubules and the actual function of consciousness. Currently, we have like correlations, and that's neat, but it's not enough to say, oh yes, this is the origin of consciousness. So maybe come back in 10 years and we'll talk then.
I agree that it's not all there, and I don't have enough to lead you across that bridge, but if I could link it to being something cosmically abstract, right? And we figure out what that actually means. And there,
I still don't know what that means.
I don't either.
So then how can you say it? How can you even use the word or use the phrase?
Because so from what I can understand, okay, from what I understand that it means for something to be, a cosmic bit that is abstract, is that it exists outside of the way that we normally think about things, right? That's what does it mean to be abstract, right?
Well, it just means that it doesn't exist in like a physical reality.
Exactly. And that's why I was coming at this from that dualist perspective, because what people argue in dualism, the mind is, I say, is a quantum God that exists outside of the universe, that is this massive collection of some kind of probability stuff that affects the way that quantum mechanics works inside of our when I say universe, I'm saying like time and space universe, like physical matter stuff. So there's like a physical matter universe stuff. That's where we are. And outside of this universe is a vast, endless ocean of probabilities. And somehow this thing creates the things that are minds. Does it have a mind itself? I don't know. I can't say that, right? I don't know what this thing is, but that's what I would consider to be my God. So people ask me like, what religion are me? I say quantum mechanics. There's a quantum God outside our universe.
But it seems like this thing would just be an abstract, maybe you could even call it like an abstract computer.
Do you think computers are one day going to have consciousness?
Yeah, but I'm also a materialist about consciousness.
So you don't think that there will eventually be some type of AGI with how fast
No,
AI
I think that there will be, and actually I wouldn't be surprised if we already had it to some degree and we just don't know it.
Yeah, the Department of Defense has some like freaking robot out there.
No. What I'm saying is we don't have a good definition or a good way to check what things are conscious. If at some point we do figure out like what a criteria is for a thing to be conscious, like it has to meet these criteria. Say that we come up with like a good criteria in 50 years or something. It's possible that somebody looks at that criteria and then looks back to 2026 and is like, oh damn, according to this criteria, ChatGPT was conscious. Like that's at least plausible. I don't think that we have a good enough definition of consciousness where we can even like rule that out at this point. It certainly behaves like it's conscious. So now is that enough to determine that it's conscious? Probably not, but this is all to say, I don't really have an issue with consciousness arising materialistically. But you think that consciousness is not material. You're a dualist. And right. So even if you have an abstract computer, that doesn't make it conscious.
That could be true.
And
does
so
God have to be conscious in the traditional sense? Yes. Yes, yeah. I know in the traditional sense.
Well, just
but what
if
we find out that
God is
what if we
a
find
person,
out that the thing
right?
that is God isn't conscious in the sense that we think of consciousness?
Then God isn't real.
Well, yeah, we would name it something else, though. We'd say no gods exist because all of the things that are probability that exist outside of our universe that we found some way to observe, right, is the thing that's controlling quantum mechanics inside of our universe. And so there would be no God.
We would call that like some abstract, like, I mean, that would be consistent with like Platonism plus atheism.
Okay, but and just assuming this, I just want to know if this is correct. What if it could talk to us? What if it could be like, "Hi," you know?
Well, then
it could say something.
Then it wouldn't
to
be
us,
abstract.
Communicate with us.
Abstract things, by definition, don't have causal power on the material world.
Right.
In fact, they're not supposed to have
way
causal
that
power,
we
period,
understand
at all.
the universe now.
Well, no, that's just
the way that we
that's just
understood-
what it means to be abstract, right? Abstract things don't have causal power.
But how would this abstract thing then affect the way
Yeah,
that quantum
that's
mechanics
one of the issues that I
inside
have
the
with
universe?
that's one of the issues I have with any sort of abstract world.
Right.
Abstract
so
things, by definition, don't have causal power.
Right. So just grant me this is true. What would you say then if this thing that is abstract outside the universe is affecting?
I wouldn't say it's
the
abstract.
matter and stuff?
I would say it's physical. It just doesn't occupy space-time.
But wouldn't it have to be an abstract thing to be outside of space time?
No.
You think we could have physical
this
things
was
outside space time?
No. This was the issue that I brought up with P3 to begin with, namely that you can have physical, even arguably material things that don't exist in space-time because in some sense they're like underneath space-time. They're like, as you said, like an example would be like pre-geometric quantum states.
What would you recommend? Like, so I'm not super far into quantum mechanics. Like, I understand base things. I can't
First,
get really
can you tell me
crazy
what
into
a
the math.
vector is?
Yeah, it's something that has both speed and direction.
Not speed. It has magnitude and direction. So close.
Oh, sorry. I have dyslexia. I have dyslexia. Yes, I've taken physics before.
Okay, here's what I would recommend. Pick up, is it, one sec. Okay, pick up David J. Griffith's Introduction to Quantum Mechanics and work through it. That's what you should do. Before you do anything, before you make any claims about quantum mechanics, before you try to understand any papers that involve quantum mechanics, read that book. Do the problems.
Well, I'm studying quantum biology, and I get through that with cake. There's no concepts in quantum biology that are hard.
Okay, so are you telling me that if I gave you like a, some one particle quantum system and I told you what the potential was, you could find the energy eigenvalues?
I haven't done that since like 7th grade when I was studying like
you
wave functions.
You didn't do that in 7th grade. Shut up.
I have, dude. Okay, Blitz. I know I'm gonna flex right now for a minute, dude. I literally have an eidetic memory. So I have an eidetic memory. I beat Dean Withers, who has an eidetic memory.
Dean Withers doesn't have an eidetic memory.
Whoa, he pretends he does, and I shattered him. I literally broke him. He had to kick me from the line.
What was the most recent book that you read?
About what?
What was the most recent book that you read about anything?
Just anything?
Book, yes.
I don't really read books. I read stuff on like PubMed.
Okay, but you have an eidetic memory, which means that you would remember the most recent book that you've read.
It doesn't work like that way for me. It's different. It's different than that.
Then you don't have an eidetic memory.
I'll explain this to you the best way possible without giving too much personal information about myself. I was traumatized as a kid with abuse, so I have a fractured memory.
I'm sorry to hear
so a lot of my memory. Yeah, I know. So when I try to think about things in the past, it's fractured. That fracture occurs with everything. But I could sit in front of my anatomy class for 2 minutes looking at the anatomy book and memorize all 209 bones in the human body. When the teacher gave us extra credit questions and there was a cat that had a, bone sticking up out of its knee, and she's like, what is this, for 15% extra credit? Nobody got it right, but it had to be the patella, right? It's the only sigmoid bone that exists outside of everything. I could spot the tibia and I could spot I can't say things because I'm thinking too fast right now, but like the femur, I could see all 3 of the leg bones, and then I knew it had to be that. So like, yes, I do have an eidetic memory. If I have a test or something like that, I can sit in front of a class and look at the books and glance through it, and then it's there for like an hour. And then my fractured memory makes stuff not stick. So I have an amazing short-term memory.
I'm glad. That's neat. My recommendation remains the same. Pick up An Introduction to Quantum Mechanics by David Griffiths.
Can you grant that I have an eidetic memory now, though, if what I said was true?
That's just not what an eidetic memory is, right?
Tell me what an eidetic memory is to you, and then I'll tell you how mine fits most of what you said.
An eidetic memory is that you remember everything.
Yes. So when I would read the flashcards in front of there that one of my friends made, and I'd go through it in like 3 seconds, I could close my eyes in the test and go through those flashcards in my head.
Too. I can do that too. Called having a strong short-term memory. In fact, I can do that for some of the books for some of the books that I've read a long time ago. Like there's a book that I have here next to me on my desk. And there's a quote in this book.
I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. In this book, there is a quote that is on this line. It's on this line on one of these pages. I just don't know what page it's on.
Right.
And I've been looking for it for a long time and I can't find it, but that's like a kind of memory that people have. Anyway, my point stands. Before you say anything about quantum mechanics, before you make any claims about quantum mechanics, just go read an introduction to quantum mechanics by David Griffiths and do the exercises. That will help.
So you're saying I would have to be a quantum mechanics, like, you know, I'd have to be like a quantum mechanics physicist, right? In order to study quantum biology, are you saying that's a prerequisite for that?
If you're going to make claims about quantum mechanics and you're like, no, I mean, like there are people who do quantum biology that don't really have a deep understanding of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, I'm arguing this from a standpoint of quantum biology.
But the
yes,
point is you're talking about
physics.
things like quantum information, you're talking about things like tunneling, like entanglement. These are things that you need to have a good grasp on, which requires a physicist's understanding of those things. And by the way, this isn't
the zygomatic bone is in the cheek. I know.
By the way, this is not like some like research level book. This is a book that I worked through when I was a sophomore in undergrad. This is a standard first semester book on quantum mechanics. Anybody with a high school education and perhaps some calculus, if you didn't take calculus in high school, anybody should be able to get through this book. It'll just get you to the basics where you can actually start making reasonable claims and making claims that don't sound like gibberish to somebody who has read this book.
Wait, can you say which of my claims sounds like gibberish? Because I don't think I said anything. That
the relationship between tunneling and quantum information sounded like gibberish.
So you're saying that there's zero chance that those two things are connected, that there's no evidence out there that supports that.
Wait, hold on. People are still saying I'm muted. I'm not muted. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just way behind. They're just two different categories of things, right? But anyway, I do have to go, so I have to let you go because I'm 10 minutes over my usual end time.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. No, I appreciate
thank you for being here.
That was awesome.
Take care, man. All right, I'm going to read some super chats and then I got to end the live here. I know that there's a lot of people in the guest box. I know that went on for a while, but I want to talk to people who are actually genuinely interested in science. I actually like that. So, so sue me. All right, let's take a look at the super chats. From Gretchen with the $5, Quantum God has the quantum mechanics to use quantum biology to change my quantum brain and make me quantum believe. # resistance is futile. # all will be quantum. True. Indeed, quantum mechanics, all will be quantum mechanics. And that's actually like a true position, probably. From Jesus Titty Effin Christ with the $2, I don't know, neither do you, so answer must be quantum woo. That's a cute rhyme. He was actually presenting things that people have looked into seriously. People have just looked into them seriously and then ruled them out, is what it boils down to. Or rather, people have looked into it seriously and then said, we probably don't need to look into this too seriously. I don't know why the YouTube or why the TikTok thing is so delayed. It's like behind by like a million years. Anyway, I'm going to end the live stream here. You might see me later. You might not. You will definitely see me on Sunday. So I will see you guys, if not then, or if not today, then Sunday. Oh, actually, let me just double check, make sure I didn't get any deeper, any more cash apps or anything. Okay, we're good.